Okay. Good morning. The May 22nd, 2025 virtual meeting of the Anne Arundel County Council is now in session. We are here for departmental budget presentations regarding the proposed FY26 budget for the county. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Smith is absent. Ms. Pickard.
Present.
Mr. Volke. I know that he's here.
He's on screen. Come back to Mr. Volke.
Madam Chair, Ms. Hummer.
Here, present.
Ms. Fiedler.
Present.
Ms. Rodvian.
Present.
Ms. Ledbetter.
Present.
Legislative Council Meredith Beach.
Present.
And our Madam Acting Auditor, is absent today, but we do have staff present should questions arise from that office.
And Mr. Volke?
I know that Mr. Volke ran down the hallway in his office for something, so
okay,
he'll come back.
All right. All of today's presentations will be from the Department of Public Works. Welcome, DPW. Please remember to introduce yourself when you speak. And we will now turn it over to our DPW colleague.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I need to read the Open Meetings Act statement.
Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped that. Go ahead.
Sorry. The county attorney has asked that I read the following statement. The Maryland Open Meetings Act is a state law that requires public meetings to be open to the public and to be held in places reasonably accessible to individuals who would like to attend these meetings. In addition, provisions of the county charter and the rules of procedure of the county council require meetings to be open to the public and held in Annapolis as the county seat. The virtual format of this meeting of the county council includes alternate accessibility features that the Open Meetings Act Compliance Board and the courts have reviewed and approved, such as having a call-in phone number that allows anyone with a telephone to call and listen to the meeting, broadcasting the meeting with video and audio on cable TV and on the web, allowing written comments from the public to be filed with the clerk and considered by the council, and now allowing the public to call in via Zoom and testify live. The public access provided by this technology makes the virtual meeting reasonably accessible to the public as required by the Open Meetings Act. In addition, and for all of the same reasons, it is not necessary to suspend the rules of procedure of the county council that apply to public participation and reasonable seating for the public or media or the location of council meetings. These rules have been deemed satisfied and do not need to be waived in order for this meeting to be held.
All right. Now we will turn it over to DPW, Department of Public Works. Take it away.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and esteemed council members. My name is Karen Henry, and I have the honor of serving as the Department of Public Works Director. It is my pleasure to present our department's operating and capital budget request for fiscal year 26 during National Public Works Week. This year's theme is People, Purpose, and Presence, which sheds light on the brave and essential role that the public works employees play in our daily lives. Our budget is a testament to our commitment to effectively serving our residents and enhancing their quality of life. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge my dedicated staff who are joining us on the call today. We have Arundel, our Assistant Director, as well as our Deputy Directors, Alex Bakier from Highways, Beth O'Connell from Engineering, Noel Anaskevich from Utility Operations, Brody Holthouse from Waste Management Services, and Eric Michelson from Watershed Protection and Restoration. Additionally, I would like to recognize the invaluable contributions of our budget support team who meticulously analyze our financials to ensure we maintain fiscal responsibility. This team includes Steve Kraychak, Crystal Harding, Mike Rubiak, Nestor Flores, Julie Paluda, David Braun, Chris Murphy, and many, many others. I would like to extend our gratitude to the Budget Office for their invaluable support throughout the budget process. I know we Neil is trial by fire as our new budget analyst, and we really appreciate everything he and the rest of the office have done for us this season. We appreciate your consideration of our budget request, which outlines modest increases designed to address the growing costs related to our ongoing operations, including personnel, contracts, supplies, and materials. Additionally, this request takes into account the rising capital expenses we face. So having said all that, we're going to get started. So join me for this fun ride through the journey for Public Works. Next slide.
Okay, good morning. My name is Neil Bergsman. I'm the analyst from the Office of the Budget assigned to the Department of Public Works. The Department of Public Works operating budget appears in the budget book beginning on page 219, and I will briefly summarize some of the significant features of the proposed budget. As you know, DPW is one of the largest county agencies, paid for mostly by enterprise revenues of utilities, solid waste, and watershed fees. Overall, the department's budget grows by 29 million or 8.25%. The increase in personal services reflects the county pay and benefit plans and new positions. There are 9 new positions, all of them in the enterprise operations. 6 of the 9 are actually saving money because therefore people to work at the new biosolids facilities. Using county staff will be much less costly than using contractors would be. The increase in contractual services is mainly the increasing cost of curbside trash pickup. As new collection contracts are bid and awarded, the new rates
Recording in progress.
Due to the increased costs of labor and fuel. The increase in grants, contributions, and others is mainly water and wastewater PAYGO capital funding. Focusing on the general fund, the FY 2026 budget increases 2.7%. That increase is moderated because the current FY 25 budget included about $600,000 for one-time supplies and equipment purchases to replace supplies and equipment that were destroyed by the fire in the Bureau of Highways sign shop. And with that, I will reintroduce the Director of Public Works, Karen Henry.
Thank you, Neil. Next slide. So this is just a summary of the overall budget, which Neil just covered. Next slide. So we have 769 employees. We're asking for 9 new positions overall. I just wanted to point out we have a 12% vacancy right now, and that's the vacancy rate. That's for all the bureaus. We have some very difficult positions to fill. Engineers and project managers, equipment operators, auto mechanics, program specialists, and program managers. They're difficult to fill for various reasons. They require special licenses. They're dealing with a very specific finite program that is maybe not so universal, not easy to find people that have the right experience. And our engineers and project managers, very hard to find engineers nowadays. And even when we get them, they don't stay very long because they are dealing with a lot of, difficulties with the position. It's not an easy job to hold. We also encourage promotions. So we always have a kind of rotating, people get promoted from equipment operator 1 to equipment operator 2. So then we're back to having a vacancy in equipment operator 1. And we have a lot of positions like that. But we're proud of the fact that a lot of employees do get promoted and do well in the Department of Public Works. Next slide. I'm going to talk about our general fund first. That funds highways and most of engineering. It's on page 222 to 224 of your budget book. Next slide. So just some unique purchases that we have wanted to draw to your attention. We're purchasing survey equipment and software. It's a $128,000 request. Our survey division, it's a small group of folks that do a lot of work. They do 130 surveys annually. They survey rights of way, easements, construction surveys, as-built, monument markers for PWAs. They're doing this for the entire county, not just Public Works. We also have a survey group that does control stations and new infrastructure features that are being mapped into our GIS system. This request is to purchase 3 survey units and 3 electronic data collectors. It's replacing obsolete equipment that if we were to have to hire external services would be $1.16 million annually. So it's a small investment in this equipment. Having this equipment also allows us to have less employees. We used to have 21. We're down to 11 that are in our survey division. So that's a lot to do with technology and keeping up with it. Next slide. This is a request that came to us from the Arundel Mills Local Development Council. They provide us, every year they've been providing money in the capital for improvements to roadways. And this year they asked if we could carve out $100,000 of the capital to put into our operating fund so that we could do some additional beautification work within the 3-mile radius of the LDC. So this is to do some extra roadway maintenance, drainage, tree removal, litter, and other services along the roadways. The work was currently done by West County Road District, but with this money, we will be hiring contractual services to assist in order to be able to keep up with the demand. Just pointing out some of the top service requests that come from this 3-mile radius, pothole patching, 6.5% of our overall requests for potholes from all the different divisions. Tree removal is about 14% and tree trimming 6%. Next slide. This is our heavy equipment replacement. We ask for this every year. The additional 1.051 million will provide us with new equipment replacements that'll help us get to our goal of an average age of our equipment of 8 years. Right now, our equipment's around 9.5 years old. There's heavy duty equipment. They work hard during snow season, but also all year round doing road work. We have a base budget of only $382,000 that maybe buys 2 pieces of equipment nowadays. The heavy equipment costs have gone up 10% to 30% year over year since COVID. I mean, even before COVID. And the delivery times are up 100%. So it takes us twice as long to get something that we order. So we may order it, July 1 when we get our funding, but it could take a whole year or more to actually get that piece of equipment delivered and in service. Next slide. So, we had a tough winter this year. I just wanted to share with you some of the concerns that kind of led to a few complaints that we received for that first storm. Our winter contractors have been declining in numbers. The graph over here shows that since 2019, we've been seeing a reduction in the number of pieces of equipment that will contract with the county to help with plowing. The yellow line shows the increase in the county maintained lane miles. So we continue to add lane miles to our infrastructure, but getting the contract support to help us plow it during a snow event has become more and more difficult. Approximately 35% reduction in that in our contract force. So why have we had that problem? Well, first is in order for these contractors to even staff up to even put in a contract to be able to work with the county, they have to certainly gear up on their end. They have to purchase special premium insurance. They have to, of course, get all the equipment, plows, blades, salt spreaders, everything they need, which they may not have until they contract with us. And then they have to get special business licenses, workman's compensation, and there's a ton of other administrative overhead. And that's just to contract with the county. And if you can imagine, a lot of these companies are companies that do landscaping during the nice weather. So, and then they're trying to earn some money to have work year round. So they're not big businesses that can incur these costs up front without some guarantee that they'll be paid later. Also, during a snowstorm, we always trying to save money because we hate to come in with that third or fourth quarter transfer because of snow, which is inevitable because we're really not funded for snow. That's an emergency situation. So what happens in order for us to do that is the first folks that go home during a snow event are our contractors. It's cheaper for us to continue using county employees than it is to have the contractors. So they're not getting as many hours to do the work. And so that means therefore not getting paid as much as they would like. And again, to make it worth their while to contract with the county. So our solution to that is to increase our retainer payment. Next slide. Retainer payments are what we pay up front for folks to contract. So once they go through the contract process, they get a retainer that's to guarantee that they will work when we call them when there's actual snow. That ranges based off of how much they get for retainer, ranges off of what type of equipment it is, and we pay per piece of equipment. And there's a whole schedule on that. This is just something, you know, giving you an idea down the chart at the bottom there. We rely heavily on the contractors. We have a ratio of 3-to-1 contract equipment to county equipment. So we can't do snow removal without contractors. And we're not paying them enough in retainers to make it worth their while to come on board for the county. So what happened this year with that 35% loss of equipment is we were not able to keep up with residential streets to the level of service that we would have liked. And we really didn't have a lot of backup for the storm because it lasted a lot longer than typical storms do. And that just puts us in a greater risk for having impassable roads. So we believe this extra $150,000, which is basically doubling the amount of money we have for retainers, will attract more, hopefully bring back some of those contractors who have left us and make it more worth their while. Next slide. All right, I'm going to talk about the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, and that's on page 229 of your budget book. So first I want to start out by, we have some temporary budget decreases. It would be great if these were permanent, but they're not. First is our a reduction of 1.1 million in our out of county trash disposal. We're getting ready to open up sub-cell 9.3. And that, in order to do that, the first thing we do is layer it with what we consider soft trash. And that's typical curbside collection trash, unlike what comes into the landfill directly, which is not soft and potential for puncturing the liner that we have. So it's a regulatory requirement that we do that, but it does save us money because we're not sending that trash to Annapolis Junction transfer. So that'll give us a little savings there. The other thing we're seeing, which we hope is a trend that continues, is that the market value for our single stream recyclings has gone up in value, which means we make more revenue or we pay less for the handling of our recycling. And in this case, we're paying less for the handling of our recycling. And that's the curbside single stream recycling that folks get. Next slide. So this is our big expenses. The solid waste fund is increasing 7.6 million. That's subtracting some of the savings that I've mentioned before. The big driver of the cost increase is 6.8 million for curbside collection. We rebid the contracts. They were a fiscal year 16 contracts, and they expired or were expiring. Of course, we have to start the process to rebid those well in advance. So most of them are starting July 1, except for the one service area 5. You recall Ecology Services was the vendor who went on strike. So we were able to get Gunther Refuge on early in case Ecology was unable to resume services. So what we're finding with the reason of the big increase is the new bid prices, and these are competitively bid. So every one of these is the lowest bidder. They came in at 30 to 105% higher than the prices that were negotiated for the last contract. So this significant increase is a huge driver for our solid waste fund increases. Some other minor increases, personal services, and that's consistent with the package that's every other department is seeing as well, and some capital outlay to replace some of our larger trucks. So next slide. We're also asking for a safety coordinator position. This is a new position that is needed in order to help protect even greater our employees and our customers that visit our sites. The work that we do in the waste management services is dangerous. So if you can imagine equipment operators at the landfill helping to pack in the waste that comes in through the landfill, there's inherent risks to that job. Plus, there's all the other equipment operators when we're transporting the different materials that leave our recycling centers and either go to our landfill or they go to our partners that we contract with, depending on the material. There's a lot of risk with that. And then our customer service employees that greet our visitors to our recycling centers, there's risk there, and many more that we don't have time to go into the details, but we really needed someone who can focus on the specific risks that are inherent at the waste management services. And then we want that individual to focus on updating policies, organizing and delivering training, conducting safety audits and facility inspections so they can help educate everyone on maybe what's not working so well and look for ways to make things work better. And then track and report safety data. So this is a very important position, one we probably needed many years ago. And we do have someone that does some of this part-time. Their main job is regulatory compliance related, and they try very hard to keep up with all this. But with the increase in the regulatory requirements that we have in the solid waste world, he's unable to manage this. We need a full-time person that can focus on safety for solid waste. Next slide. We are proposing an increase. That's Bill 4425. It's right now the rate is $404 per household. It's a rate that is paid on property tax bill. We're requesting to increase it to $426 per household. That's a 5.4% increase. It is consistent with what we projected in last year's budget for what we would need this year, which is pretty remarkable considering the loss and the hit we took with the ecology strike. And then we are not requesting any charge increases to our landfill charges. That's the charges when people come to the landfill and they have to have their waste weighed. Generally, it's businesses. Next slide. This is just showing you the projections for the next few years and what we think the rates are going to be needed for the solid waste fund. But as you can see, even with these rates, we are dipping into our fund balance. So we still, even with the increase of rates, are not keeping up with what the comfortable fund balance should be in our solid waste fund. Next slide. This slide is just showing you a comparison for what you pay, what we are charging versus other counties. And as you can see, all the other jurisdictions are also having to raise their rates. It's a little hard to make the comparison. It's not really apples to apples necessarily. All the different jurisdictions pointing out here handle their solid waste differently. And then we don't have Baltimore County or Baltimore City on this list because they are entirely funded by general fund. They don't have an enterprise that handles their solid waste operations. Next slide. All right, I'm going to talk about watershed protection and restoration. That's on page 230. Great news, no fiscal year rate increase for the watershed protection and restoration fee. So hopefully we're all happy. It's a sunny day, even though it's rainy outside. We're looking at our projections coming up next several years. And we, of course, this year, no increases. We think we will not need them next year. But in 28 through 31, small increases are expected. And we'll continue to monitor that and report back to you next year on where we stand with our projections. Next is our utility fund. That's on pages 225 to 227. Next slide. We're asking for a new position for our SCADA system, Assistant Programmer 1. SCADA is our supervisory control and data acquisition, or as I like to say, it's the brains of the water and sewer operations. This request is $98,000. It will address an urgent need for a rising cyber attacks targeted at critical water infrastructure. We're seeing our brothers and sisters in other jurisdictions having significant attacks to their water infrastructure where they are unable to function. So we're trying to avoid that. SCADA is vital to how we do business. It's first, they can control our plants, pumping stations. We monitor everything from our SCADA system. It allows us to have the amount of staff that we do. We would probably need 4 times as many employees as we have in utility operations if it were not for SCADA. So we rely on it. It's very important to our operations. Recently, this House Bill 1205 Modernized Maryland was passed, and that is basically requiring utilities to have robust cybersecurity measures put into place. So this position will help us with that. Some key responsibilities, of course, security and the physical and digital infrastructure, monitoring the system for security breaches, conduct security audits, manage incident response, protect the environment, health, and revenue loss, and adapt to increasing system complexities. Next slide. We're also asking for a development facilitator. So when anyone wants to do a new development or make changes to their development plans, it involves water and sewer. It ends up coming through three different divisions within Public Works. It comes to our finance group, our engineering group, and our employees that do water modeling. So this was a key recommendation that came out of the Land Use Process Improvement Report. We're expecting this to streamline how we work with OPZ and IMP and developers, having this facilitator to formalize workflows, to make sure we're not missing any deadlines, to eliminate any inconsistent feedback that may be happening between those three different divisions within Public Works, and to have a one person that the developers and the different points of contact have to work with. We understand that it's something similar is being done already in IMP and OPZ. So we believe this is going to enhance our communication and collaboration between the other departments as well. I will say that in recent years, the collaboration between DPW, IMP, and OPZ has been more robust, more frequent, more based on problem solving. So we'd like to continue that and keep enhancing what we've been doing. Next slide. So Neil mentioned this, we're asking for 6 new wastewater technicians. We are building a new biosolids facility. This is in the capital projects, approved project. It's unusual for us to ask for 6 positions at a time, but this facility will be running 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. It will require 3 shifts, so 2 person per shift. That's why we're asking for 6 people. Just a little reminder about biosolids. Currently what we do, we contract out our biosolids management to a company called Synagro. They have a sole source contract with us. It costs us $10.3 million annually. And what they do is they take it and they land apply it on farms. The land application is being pretty much working toward phasing out of allowing that. In Maine, they've already stopped. They're making the rules so stringent that it's becoming more and more impossible to do. So for the last 5 years, DPW has been looking at what other alternatives do we have to land application for our biosolids? How can we manage them more efficiently and effectively? So we've come up with a plan to build a energy neutral thermal drying gasification plant, and that will reduce the volume of biosolids. Right now we're dealing with 71,000 wet tons. And it will produce a biochar or sand that can be sold or reused for construction. And the benefits of doing that is that we will be able to control our own product, so the end result of the biosolids. We'll be able to get out from under this financial burden that we are experiencing with having a sole source provider. And then we'll be able to make some environmental improvements. Biosolids do have PFAS in them. And a PFAS, just a reminder, that's forever chemicals. I know you've heard that multiple times probably. This gasification process will destroy the PFAS. So it's that, we know that this is going to be way better for the environment. And although it's an expensive project, a return on investment is expected within 10 to 20 years. And then ultimately we had to make a decision. Do we want to have in-house operators, or do we want to contract out the operations? So we looked around the nation to look at what are other places doing, and there's a mix. Edmonds, Washington is a jurisdiction that has a facility that's very similar to what we are hoping to do in Anne Arundel County, or we are doing in Anne Arundel County. And they're paying for contractual operations $2.5 million annually. So it's kind of a no-brainer that we have to do this in-house, and we're happy to do it. It's going to be hard to fill the position, so we want to get ahead of that. And then, of course, they'll be part of the design and construction. And we'll be saving $2.09 million a year with the in-house staff. Next slide. All right, I'm going to ask you now to buckle up. So if you've been able to stick with me this long, I'm going to now get into some of the more difficult parts of our utility funds and why the rate is the way it is, and why we're asking for more money. So I hope that I don't lose you in this next section. It's a very important topic, very complex. Happy to answer your questions and talk further. So I'm going to go into what the rates are, what they fund, who pays for what, Anne Arundel County compared to others, our growth and how that affects capacity, what a growth and capacity are, some real life examples of capacity concerns that we're facing right now, and some food for thought for the future. Next slide. All right, just a little reminder about the utility enterprise funds and how they work right now. We have two funds, the operating fund and the debt service fund. The operating fund is funded by user rates that all of our customers pay on their quarterly bill. That goes to pay for our operating expenses and pay-go funded capital. So cash for capital projects rather than debt servicing those projects. The debt service fund is our capital budget. That is funded by the environmental protection fee, or EPF, that the users use. It's a percentage of their user rate. And that goes to pay for system rehabilitation and maintenance. This is managing what we already have. The CFCCs, paid per EDU, that goes to pay for system expansion and growth. Next slide. So the methodology of our rate structure is that current customers pay based on consumption, and they are paying operating cost. That's their user rates, and they're paying system rehabilitation cost, the EPF. New customers are paying for growth, and they're paying for system expansion costs, which is the CFCC. Typically, that's developers, people that have infill lots that can connect to our system. Tenant fit outs, and that means if they're rental properties that are being intensified in use, and a good example of that is a bank is being converted to a Chick-fil-A, that it now needs additional CFCCs because their water use is going to be much greater than the previous use. That's considered an intensification, so they would pay additional CFCCs for that. And of course, anyone who would be converting from a well or septic system to the county's public system. And the other methodology and key to the whole thing is that the utility fund must be self-sustaining. It's in the charter that no general fund can contribute to the utility fund unless the utility fund is borrowing from the general fund. Next slide. So why does this rate structure work? Well, it's a revenue stream that's aligned with expenses, so you only pay for what you need. So the users are only paying for their usage, and the new customers are paying to connect, to be a new customer. It also provides fee transparency. So we're separating out growth from maintenance of our system. And the customers know that because of the fee, the EPF fee. Also, they know they're only paying for user rates, and they don't have hidden in their taxes or some other form more rates that they're paying unknowingly toward the utility fund. It's very clear and transparent. Because only new customers pay for growth through a one-time fee, that we're able to maintain the lowest rates for your usage in the region. And existing users are not paying for any system expansions. Next slide. So why do we need to raise the user rates? This is the customer's usage rate. Well, we were reliant on Clean Water Commerce Act grants. We've received $8 million. That's expiring at the end of this fiscal year. At the end of 2029, we will stop receiving the grants for Cox Creek and Patuxent, the state stopping these grants. So we have to be prepared for this loss of revenue into our operating budget. And as you're hearing, I'm sure with all the other departments that have spoken, there's continues to be increase in labor and repair costs, increase in equipment and material costs, long lead times to get equipment and materials, increase in electricity and chemical costs, more stringent permit requirements. All of these things cost money, and we need the funds in order to be able to keep up with it all. And an interesting point I wanted to make is that our infrastructure is aging. Our pipes, our water and sewer pipes, are on average 40 years old. And our oldest pipe is from 1917. Still working, but we know we're going to have to replace it. It's lasted well past its expected lifespan. Next slide. So we're proposing a 6% increase in our water and sewer usage rate. We are not proposing any increase to the environmental protection fee. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Go back. I missed a point. So the blue is our how much money we have, and the yellow line is our target for what our balance should be, which is 2 months of operating budget. That's in the code. We're required to meet that. So these rates, the 6% will allow us to get there. There's a little bit more than what we need, and I'll explain what we're going to use that for and why we're asking for more. But we're looking at a forecast of about 5% increases in the next 5 years. Next slide. So even with the increase, we're still one of the lowest user rates in the region. These rates are based off of 2025 and are not including what other jurisdictions are going to raise. But in my conversations with directors from other departments from around the state of Maryland, is that all of them are having to raise their rates. Next slide. Wanted to point out an interesting comparison, which is Anne Arundel County user rates as compared to CPI. So we're looking at CPI for water and sewer. There's a general CPI, there's different categories, but this one is specifically for water and sewer. And it's been 40% in the last 10 years. Anne Arundel County user rates have only gone up 16% in that same period of time. Another thing that's interesting on this graph to point out is those jurisdictions, if you look at Loudoun Water and Prince William, which are closest to our rates than any other jurisdiction, they have had steady increases of 5% a year, every year. When you look at Baltimore City, Harford County, they'll go for a year with no rate increase and then have to increase the rates 10 or more % in a year. And you'll see the slow and steady, just like we learned in the tortoise and the hare, the slow and steady is winning the race on keeping their rates lower. So just wanted to point that out. Next slide. So here is where you really need to brace yourself, because we're going to get into CFCCs, Capital Facility Connection Charges. Next. So this is Bill 4525. I know you've been getting some testimony in opposition to this, so I want to explain what we're doing. This again is a complex situation. It's my job as the director of the department to share with you what I know about this so that you can make an informed decision. We're not in a good situation. We're asking for 10% raise for this year, 10% raise, a 10% rate increase this year. And it does look like the forecast needs to be at least 10% in the upcoming years. But you can see from the yellow line that that still does not meet our target. We're still not going to have in our reserves what we need to have a comfortable comfortable balance. And that balance is what helps us get low rates for incurring debt. So when we don't have any money in our reserves, then we have to pay higher interest rates, which just gets impacted even worse on our customers. Next slide. So why are so you know that the capital facility connection charges, as I've said, are related to capital projects. That's where with those, the debt service fund is funding our capital projects. So why are these increasing? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but labor availability and cost. Prevailing wage has added at least 7% increase per project. That's an average number on every project that's over $250,000. I will say that almost every project for utility operations is over $250,000. So we're paying this additional prevailing wage on all of our projects. The other thing is that material and equipment costs are going up. It's important to point out that utility inflation is higher than general inflation. And the graph over here shows you that. The blue is utility, how it's increased, what it's been, and the yellow is general. So you'll see that the yellow did have a peak post COVID. Utilities kind of rode that out a little bit, but they're seeing an increase. Part of that has to do with the complexity of doing a utility project. These are underground pipes, a lot of technologies involved. That's why these rates are the way they are. The other things that are contributing is availability and lead time. So it's very similar to what's happening in our operating budget, also happening in our capital projects. Having to meet so many regulatory compliance requirements. They keep getting more and more stringent and more difficult to address. My predecessors dealt with going from biological nutrient removal to enhanced nutrient removal. And I remember being in on the discussions and being very concerned that we wouldn't be able to meet enhanced nutrient removal. And we had to make significant investment in order to do that. We're now facing even more stringent, more difficult, more unknown, more unstable, like the PFAS, which is an unstable situation that we're in right now. And so it's just becoming more and more difficult to manage utilities. Changes in permit requirements, we have to follow the same thing other construction, people doing construction, stormwater mitigation, forest mitigation, maintenance of traffic. These are all important. We want to follow them. They cost money. The other thing is aging infrastructure. Our infrastructure is not getting younger, it's getting older. Next slide. We continue to put in as many ways as we can to try to contain these costs for what we have control over. And these are just some of the ways we're doing that. Value engineering. Every scope that comes in for a project, we're looking at, do we really need to do that? Do we really need to do it now? Although I will say every time we delay a project, we're finding that it's only costing more money to do that project later. So delaying projects is not really a great solution because you're just putting that burden on the next budget. Alternative procurement strategies. So we've been working with purchasing. They've been trying to use new ways that we can do procurement, such as design build, to look to see if that's going to save us money because it can be more efficient than the way we're doing things now. Looking at ways, how can we reduce the contractor risk? So one reason why they bid so high is the risk that they're incurring with these projects. Again, utilities, you're dealing with underground issues. Every time we dig something up, we always find something we did not know was going to be there. It's either in the wrong place. It's either a different kind of pipe. It's worse than we thought it was. It's caused more damage to the road. Now we've got to repair a whole road. I mean, this happens every time we do any project. They're very complex projects and they take forever to get done. We're also looking at ways we can incentivize contractors to finish the job quicker, because what we're learning too is that longer it takes them to do this work, the more it costs us. And then a big part of this is oversight that the project managers do to make sure that these contractors are doing what they said they would do and they're doing them well and holding them accountable. Other things that we're doing, predictive maintenance and asset management, they kind of go together. That's really looking at our assets and trying to predict when does it need to be replaced? How long can we go? Let's replace it before it fails, because once it fails, it costs so much more to replace it than it does to replace it on a regular schedule. So this is how we're trying to run the utility now, and that's how we're trying to save money, but still costs money to do everything. So why is the debt service increasing? So you saw, I showed you the graph that showed our debt service is continuing to grow. If I had no projects in the future, which is not possible, you would still see a growth in the debt service, because debt service is a combination of things we've already bought and paid, we've already went into debt for. So projects we already done and completed, and projects that we're doing now, and projects that we're doing in the future. That all contributes to the debt service. Over the years, we've kept environmental protection fees as low as we possibly could. You can see how we are reluctant to raise that fee because it affects the pocket of our users, people on fixed incomes, the many residents that are on our, using our services and the businesses that use our services. We're also paying off debt from projects that were built in the 2000s. That's all coming to fruition, so that's affecting our debt service. And these are just a list of some of the big projects that happened that were expansion projects paid for with CFCCs. So wait, there's more. This isn't everything. Recent exemptions for declining CFCC revenue has also put some pressure on our fund as well. So various types of housing, various groups, nonprofit type groups that get either a full reduction or get a 50% reduction. Somebody has to pay for the cost of that growth and the capacity that we have to build. So if we're not charging them, we have to charge someone. Next slide. So one thing we're trying to do to help stabilize the rates is a pay-go course correction. As I said, we have over the years tried to keep pay-go down, not increasing it or keep it pretty low. But what that's really done is pushed projects into the debt service that are paying a 4.5% interest rate to get to, so we have to bond fund these projects. Well, we could just be paying cash for them. Paying cash for them, it makes more sense because most of these projects that are in the category that we pay for with PayGo don't really have a 30-year lifespan. So shifting some of these projects to PayGo that are currently in debt service, $11 million worth additional that we're looking at for fiscal year 26. That's going to help alleviate some pressure on the debt service. It's not fully correcting the problem, but it's one solution that we're putting into place this year or for fiscal year 26. Next slide. All right, this slide showing you the CFCC rate history. You'll see that in the yellow line, and how it's been a little jagged line. So we've increased, then we decrease, we increase, and we decrease, and then we've been on a trajectory toward increasing it. The red line shows you the debt service. So you can see we're still incurring debt greater than what we're bringing in revenue, which is the blue lines. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So how is capacity determined? So I'm talking about CFCCs, they pay for growth, that's capacity. What do I mean by capacity? I'm talking about in our water and sewer plants, pumping stations, and our pipes that have to accommodate the additional water and sewage needed for additional development in our county. So water and sewer master plan, we do that every 10 years. It takes into consideration what has been recently approved for zoning changes through the different planning and zoning, the different regional plans and all the planning that goes on in OPZ. We take that information and then we have to plan out what kind of capacity needs we're going to have to meet in 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years. We have an allocation committee. That's the 3 department directors, OPZ, IMP, and DPW. We meet twice a year just to discuss what kind of capacity, what the capacity we have now, what we've already allocated, what we have in the pipeline to be allocated, and just some things that maybe we're aware of because developers have said, hey, I'm thinking about developing this, but they have not actually committed to paying for reserving that allocation. In the utilities, we have some limitations on growth. First thing is, we cannot legally allocate any new connections that may exceed capacity. The county is required to meet permit levels of groundwater withdrawal and wastewater nutrient discharge. We have permits that we have to meet. If we don't meet them, we'll be fined. But not only that, we lose the trust of the public on how we manage our water resources. So we cannot sell any connections that we don't have the capacity to accept. And by going through the process that we have, it does prevent moratoriums on development, which is something we definitely do not want to get to. Next slide. We do have some capacity issues in the county. And I'm gonna, Aaron, maybe you could use your pointer to show in the yellow area. This area all is in Anne Arundel. It's Linthicum, Hanover, parts of Brooklyn Park, Arundel Mills. This area goes through our pumping stations. Their waste goes through our pumping stations, goes through either Howard County or Baltimore County and on to Baltimore City to the Patapsco Water Reclamation Facility there. We have the pumping station that's Linthicum Shipley is at capacity. This is also a high growth area for the county. This is where your latest plans are looking to do growth. We have a project right now, basically it takes 6 years. It's almost completed and it costs $1.43 million to do, to expand the capacity a little bit. It can't do the full capacity of what we need. We have a major upgrade that's taking 10 years to do. That's a $21 million upgrade. That's just to handle the waste for that one pumping station in order to send it, in this case, through Baltimore County to Baltimore City. Why are we at capacity? Recent things, and the one most recent is that we've changed the BWI mixed use overlay. Was zoned industrial. Now it's allowing 22 units an acre for multifamily. This is a higher EDU usage. So we just have to redesign our capacity to meet the demand, because we do not want to have a moratorium on growth in this area. This would not be good for the county. We know this is a highly, a lot of activities going on there now with development. A lot of things have already been allocated. So when I say we're at capacity, I'm talking about what is in the already known to and has reserved capacity, but not built yet. So next slide. This is just some examples of projects and how we do CSC funding. I thought it'd be important for you, if you're staying with me at this far, and I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm almost done. Is to kind of give you an idea of how we divide up a project on what is going to be paid for by CFCCs and what's going to be paid for by EPF. So here's 3 good examples, but I'm just going to focus on the Crofton Meadows plant. That's a water treatment plant. We're going from 15 million gallons of water a day to a 20 million gallon water a day project. It's a $74 million project. Generally, no project is all growth or all EPF. In this case, growth, because we're expanding the plant, it's mostly growth. However, about 10% of the project is to replace things that really aren't contributing to the growth. But when you just take that into the value of an EDU, that's the measure that CFCCs is paid on, it's 6,230 basically based over a 10-year period. That's about how long this project will take, that we need to raise in order to pay for this project. So just giving you a sense of that. Next slide. So a little more information about this Crofton Meadows is it's a good example. It is serving the pink, purple, and yellow and gold areas of the county. Again, in an area where I think there's a lot of plans for development. The current capacity of the plant is 15 million gallons a day. We are nearing capacity at 13, almost 14 million gallons a day. We have an expansion that's currently in design for the 20 million gallons a day with an ultimate projected plan for 30 million gallons a day. That's what's showing in our master plan if everything got built out. What that $74 million that I mentioned in the last slide, what that pays for is expanding the actual plant, drilling new wells, and building new raw water lines. So it's a lot involved with that project, but that's what we need to do. And we need money in order to do this so that we have the capacity. And a big thing about capacity, important to know, is so that, of course, we want everybody to be able to turn on their water when they need it at any time. But it's also for fire protection, to keep the water pressure. I mean, there's a lot involved with how we determine capacity. Next slide. So I know we get a lot of heat for the fact that Anne Arundel County is on the higher end of capital facility connection charges. So I want to explain why that is. So this is just kind of where we fall in the region. Next slide. First of all, Anne Arundel County has a significant amount of infrastructure that we manage. 7 water reclamation facilities, 11 water treatment plants, 264 pumping stations. That is probably more than any other jurisdiction in the nation, probably the world, to have that many pumping stations. And a lot has to do with the way Anne Arundel County is and the 400 miles of waterfront properties that we have here. And we also have over 3,000 miles of water and sewer mains. So we've got a lot going on with our infrastructure. We get compared a lot to Howard County and Baltimore County. Howard County relies heavily on Baltimore City and WSSC for their water and sewer. They have one wastewater treatment plant. That does not serve all of Howard County. They have to get their water, drinking water from Baltimore City, all of it, and then they get a big portion of their sewer services from them as well, and WSSC. Baltimore County buys all their water and sewer from Baltimore City. So they're not having to maintain their own infrastructure. They're paying somebody else to do it. In addition, both Howard and Baltimore County, they have a added water and sewer surcharge on their annual property taxes. So if you remember, I said before, growth is paid for by the new customer and the new customer only in Anne Arundel County. In these counties, everyone is paying every year for growth through their on their tax bill for a special water and sewer charge. So it's handled a lot differently than we do it. Allows them to have their connection charge lower, but people, again, you're paying for it somewhere else. Maybe it's not as transparent as how we do it, but they are paying for it. Next slide. So what are some of our revenue challenges? Tax revenues increase naturally with property values and income increases. You could not raise your taxes, their rate, for years and still have increased revenues because our property values in Anne Arundel County and people's incomes tend to increase, not decrease. With utilities, there is no natural increase in revenue. Revenues are based on consumption. So energy efficient appliances actually go against that. So people are consuming less. That's great for the environment, but it's not helping our revenues. Another aspect of that is impact fees. So developers pay a lot of impact fees. The county can keep those impact fees lower than the actual cost of building schools and building roads and all that, because the county can allow for some discretion. One way is they can tax all the residents to pay for those projects, or they can, decide to tolerate, crowded classrooms and higher traffic. When it comes to water and sewer capacity, we have no discretion. We either have the capacity or we don't. If we don't have the capacity, then we cannot permit any growth, which is moratoriums. And we definitely don't want to get to that. So the next slide. So my last slide on this, and hopefully you've stuck with me here, is just some food for thought, just kind of summarizing the important points here. A reliable and sustainable water and sewer system requires adequate funding. The impacts to capacity, changings to zoning, permit regulations, state and local legislation, they impact how much capacity we have and what we're doing and preparing for and building capacity in the future. And as historic measure that we have valued in our county is that we keep the utility fund self-sustaining, that the average user's rate is low and affordable, that capacity is paid for, new capacity is paid for entirely by the new customer, and that our rates are balanced. That has been a long-term value since 40 plus years that we've had the utility fund as an enterprise fund. So next, I think you have to click because this is our future. We have a flow factor study underway. That's a very important part of the future. On how we determine the amount of flow that determines the EDUs, that determines how much they're going to pay in CFCCs. So we're looking forward to getting that report. That's going to show us whether, how we're charging if we've been using the right flow factors. The other thing we want to get started in fiscal year 26 is to really dive into our rate structure, how we're doing it, what are other jurisdictions doing, how can we improve it, how can we make things better for our rates, and how can we get the right revenue that we need in order to make our debt service reserves better for better levels than they are right now. And I think that's it. We're ready for questions.
All right, hold on. Okay, I know that I have many questions coming for you, Miss Henry. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Henry, thank you for a very detailed brief. I love DPW because I think a lot of folks don't realize how complicated the just the wide breadth of complexity that exists within the Department of Public Works. And so first, appreciate all of the help you guys have been doing for the community day cleanups. When I've reached out and asked for trash cans or dumpsters for the sites, you guys have jumped on that like water on rice. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it sounds like it should be. The second piece is we haven't gotten to the capital side yet. The community cleanup, when it comes to getting resources, I spoke to the county exec probably like a year ago, and we had spoke about there being a process by where a community could arrange to get supplies for their communities, because a lot of them, they spend a lot of the resources out of their pocket to do it. I wasn't sure you were aware of any progress or updates on that facilitation.
So are you talking about trash bags and gloves, that sort of thing for cleanup? Is that what
Yeah.
I have not heard anything.
Yes.
But I will be happy to look into. I've not been asked within DPW to do that, but that doesn't mean it's not happening maybe somewhere else. We, as you know, we'll provide a dumpster. We have the community events scheduled throughout the year. Some communities get 2 dumpsters if that's appropriate. So I don't know what's going on over there. Let me think. But I will be happy to find out from the county executive's office what, where they were looking for that kind of assistance, buying trash bags and that sort of thing. We have done that for the Glen Burnie cleanup. When we're asked, we typically will respond. It's coming out of watershed protection and restoration. They do a lot of cleanups and lead a lot of cleanups. So they've been able to help with some things like trash bags and trash pickers and that sort of thing. But we don't have like a line item on.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. No problem. They had mentioned that they were in the process of developing something. The other question, if something else popped up, I'll save it towards the end, but because it's on capital, is the capital facility connection charge that you referenced. And I think you're right that we have signaled to various departments and the county with large, and the state, quite frankly, that the direction that we've been taking when it comes to housing is significant, which is why you have all those pieces of legislation emphasizing the affordable housing, because it is such some sort of problem set to deal with, and to try to figure out how does are there any additional ways, because as we raise the capital connection charge, but yet we have this policy driven agenda, but yet the mechanics of actually implementing that aren't necessarily aligned. They're kind of counter to each other. So while we're trying to reduce the cost of housing, we're raising the cost of the charge. So it's like a net zero effect. And so how do are there other ways that we could try to generate revenue or raise revenue to address that without it? And maybe this isn't the right form to sort of, because you might need to deep dive into that. But I wanted to put it out there because it does look like we're doing 2 separate things. And not able to accomplish affordable housing because we'll keep raising the connection charge. And you mentioned that the fees for future expansion is placed on the new people. Well, how do we get the new people if the fees are to the extent where they can't build a house and then they can't afford it? So it's this domino effect. And so I just wanted to just raise that and put it out there for consumption.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think part of what we need to look at in our rates. So if looking at affordable housing, we tried with the, reducing the rates for them. But yeah, I mean, I think we knew when that all got passed that it was going to mean possibly higher rates just to accommodate the less in revenue coming in to build those. Because we still, even though you're reducing the rate, you still have to build the capacity. We can't, like I said, with the crowded classrooms, you can tolerate that. I know we don't like it, but we can tolerate that, and even short term, and say we're going to build stuff later, build the new schools later. And I think we've tolerated crowded classrooms for many years, and now we've been having a lot of projects that have been building new schools. But we can't do that with the utility rates. But I think part of our study needs to look into, hey, this is something that the county is looking to do. We're going to be looking at what kind of development is in the works, and then how that revenue can be raised. Maybe it's not I mean, I don't know the answer. Let me be clear there. But there's probably, other jurisdictions have decided to use taxes. But I guess the point is that it does have to come from somewhere. It's not a free service, And I guess, where does our value fit in as a county on who we think should be paying for that?
Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Henry, thank you for your presentation. You did a fantastic job. That was a lot of operating information. While we are on this topic, we touched on this very concern, or I asked questions around this very thing when we toured the treatment facility for the pilot that is underway. Is there any operating money in the bill or in the budget for that pilot in the next fiscal year?
No. The pilot right now is being paid for through the capital, because that's still in the research phase. So
Okay.
that we're paying a contractor to operate that pilot. It's
Okay.
the engineering firm that's helping us with all the research and everything that we're doing. They are the ones operating the pilot right now. So it's in the capital budget. It's part of the Our Water program. MAR has its own project, so it's covered in there.
Okay, great. I have other questions, but I'll wait my turn for the next time.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of concerns about your presentation. Was excellent, but I want to go back to first, before I get into capital connection charges. I wanted to go back to the $100,000 requested from the LDC for that targeted area. Is that replacing LDC funds or adding to them?
No, what they're going to do is they're reducing the capital that they normally give us by $100,000, and it's going to go into the operating fund specifically for this beautification. So that they give us like $5 million for different road projects. It's with putting in sidewalks, repaving, all the things that are happening in that radius. We're kind of slowing down on the capital project needs for that area because we've had so much focus on it with the LDC funding that we've been getting. So they thought it would be better if, instead of this $100,000 going toward a capital project, like, a sidewalk or something, that it could be put into the operating budget to focus on beautification in that area.
So that's LDC dollars.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not taxes are not paid. Like, generally the general fund is paid for by taxes. But it's not taxes, it's LDC money to focus on that area. Yeah.
Okay, it was just confusing because there's
I
certainly a lot of areas that would like to see $100,000 investment for beautification in other parts of the county.
I 100% agree with you. Yes.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So, the presentation was illuminating for sure. I am very concerned about the 10% increase this year, and then what looks like a need for the next 6 years, all the way to 2031, to keep increasing the capital connection charges. I don't feel like this model is sustainable for what we are trying to achieve in Anne Arundel County. So has DPW, are y'all exploring different ways to achieve the same outcome, whether it's, public-private partnerships? We've done this, we've explored this with road construction where there's design, but the work is not built on the back of the county. Like, just there has to be a different way to maintain our infrastructure rather than keeping the cost on new business owners, small business owners, homeowners. It just doesn't seem sustainable to me.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. So this is again part of the plan for the really deep dive into the rates, all of them, the user rate. We have a bunch of little fees too, but the primary ones, user rates, EPF, CFCCs, studying that, looking at what we can do. Do we need to ask for revenue from some other source for growth? There's all the potential options. And honestly, I don't know all of them. That's why we're going to study it and really take a deep dive into that and see what could be out there for us to do and present that, next year.
Well, Madam Chair, so if we're studying this, the council last year provided the authority for y'all to increase rates up to 5% without coming before the council. If we're still in a study mode, why would we go ahead and just double this increase when we're in a study mode?
Yeah.
I think, why don't we pause this year and do a very formal rate model study and come back to the council with something more comprehensive? Then it's very concerning to me.
I understand. I think if we can, Aaron, I don't know if you can pull back up and show the graph. That's the CFCCs, and it shows the reason is our concern about wiping out that. You're probably, if it comes at the fact that all we can do is raise CFCCs and now it's 20% next year, that's not good for developers either. They need to have it's better for them to know in advance like what these are going to cost, because they have to get their funding and all that together as well. But no, that's not the one this is one thing, which is like the revenue isn't coming in, but look at the rate, showing the 10%.
So I'm concerned. I appreciate the notion that this is this is about a developer, but this is really about a homeowner, a home buyer, and new businesses, right? That's who pays this.
Yeah, yes, it is passed on to them.
It is absolutely passed on. But the other thing is, I don't understand, if you could go back and explain, are these fees paying for debt service from growth that happened in the 2000s? Because
so
that doesn't seem fair to the new owner the new homeowner has to incur costs of when Piney Orchard was built.
Yeah. So it's a combination of things. So when we are looking at any new project that gets added to the budget, when we, there's the timeline of when we buy the bonds in order to, or sell the bonds in order to fund the projects and all of that, it's all a timing issue. So at any given time, there's bonds being paid from money being paid out of the debt service from older debt, paying our annual fees like a mortgage. That's part of what it is. It's like debt service is like, compare it to your mortgage. You're paying that over 30 years. That's what we're doing with some of this debt. And then it's also starting to take on the new debt that's happening with new projects that are coming on board. So it's always some debt is getting retired, new debt's coming on, and it's a constant stream of debt incurring for these capital projects. Does that make sense?
So my community was built 25 years ago. So whatever debt was incurred, are you saying that as a homeowner here and the user fees that I pay, am I paying for the debt service of my community being built, or are new homeowners, homeowner up the street, the new neighborhood is incurring costs to continue to pay the debt service on my neighborhood?
It's going to be a combination. But what's happened So a community that's 25 years ago, so we still have 5 years of, let's say the, you know, the day you bought your house, we incurred the debt. It's not likely because it probably was already incurred a little before that, you actually bought your house 25, you know, your 25-year-old house, right? So it's like, it's kind of, it's just, it's so if you have multiple mortgages, so we've got all these projects are basically like new mortgages. I don't know how else to explain it really. So let me try to like break it down a little bit. You are paying, you paid yourself when you bought your house, you paid for the right to connect to the county at that time. That when you're paying your monthly or your quarterly water bill, and you know, you are only paying for what you are consuming and what you, and any maintenance, which is the EPF, which is any maintenance we may do. So that'd be a project to, let's say, replace pumps, or just to, you know, like some of those things that I talked to you about, just the general maintenance projects that we have to do in order to keep up with all of our facilities. So, but when so that's what you're paying for on your bill. That's why it's low. But when you bought your house, your developer, if you bought it new, your developer passed on whatever they paid to connect to the county at that time onto you through your, whatever you paid for your house. Does that make sense? Am I answering your question?
Yes, but as my house, I actually pay a front foot fee. So on top of what I paid for my house. So I'm probably paying twice. But the as the infrastructure that connects to my house ages, is that maintenance cost being reflected in my bill, or is it being passed on? Are we keeping, you're saying we're keeping those maintenance rates really low for affordability? It sounds to me like new growth is maybe subsidizing.
So that's the environmental protection fee, and that is something we have to look at if we're to because again, like I said, our infrastructure is getting older. The fact that our infrastructure is getting older is not a growth problem. That's a current customer problem, right? That's that they're paying for that for the 35% EPF. So whatever amount of water they're using, they got that 35% of that is the EPF, and that's going into debt service to pay for maintenance. So any of the pipes in front of your house or the stuff happening at the plant to get to your house, get the water to your house cleanly, all of that is being paid for in the 35%. The to operate the plants and all the operating costs that we have, that's your user rate. So that's what you're paying per 1,000 gallons. You following me on that?
Yes, sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. I just want to make sure I'm making sense. Again, it's complex. There's so many parts and pieces to it. I try to, you know, go through it. I'm sure if you look at this again, probably going to have more questions. Please contact. I'm happy to have any kind of conversation with anyone who wants to hear me talk. I appreciate that you've all listened this long to me. So happy to go over any individual concerns at any time.
Okay. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going to stay in the same lane of topic and conversation, but before I ask my question, I do want to thank you for touching on the winter contractors and that investment. I learned more than I ever thought I would learn about the process during that first storm. I know I communicated with you all frequently, as I'm sure my colleagues did as well. So happy to see that in there. I have a question regarding the user fee. It's a little tied to the capital budget as well, but I've heard from residents, and the number of residents who reach out on this topic in District 5 has been growing. The charges for wastewater that aren't truly wastewater because they are going into the ground for watering of yards and whatever is on someone's ground property, they will see their user fees go up too. And I know they've been asking about the smart meter system, which will give a more accurate use of water that's not wastewater. So I just want to confirm that the charge difference, the fee increase will impact them as well.
That's the 6%, that's on the user rate. So the more water you use, the more you're paying. The less water, the less you pay. And then if they use over a certain amount, then they pay that capital facility recoupment charge, which is basically using more than one EDU, which is what a single family residence is expected to use. And that's when we charge that little extra. So sometimes if you're watering your lawn, that's what you're doing. Just give you an update on the AMI, that's the advanced meter infrastructure. That's the project you're talking about. We are right now evaluating, we've got 3 proposals. They're being evaluated right now. The next steps is to go into June. Oh, we have a slide for you, is to do oral presentations in June. We'll negotiate in July. Typically that's a 5 to 6 month process. Then we're going to go into the alpha phase. That's beginning in 2026. That's where we're going to be setting up the meter data management system. That's a software. We're going to be testing the meters for data validation and, everything that's involved with making sure everything works. Then the beta phase would be mid 2026. We're actually going to be installing a number, not all of the meters, be probably thousands, but not everything, just to kind of get it going, make sure everything's working in real world. And then we'd go full scale implementation. So everyone would be on that by 2027 through 2029. We're installing, almost 200,000 meters. So it's a lot of work to be done. So that's our project where that stands right now. What is going to be really great about this, and I'm hopefully not stealing Chris Murphy's thunder when he talks about this as a capital project, but you're saying the residents will be able to review and see, just like you can if you all have BG&E and you choose to look into how much electricity you're using, they'll be able to be notified when they're using more than they need. We had a major leak, Mr. Smith's district, that wasn't our leak. It was actually on private property, but it drained our system almost down to nothing, just by one large user having a break on their site, and all the water was going to their site, like about 2 million gallons. But what would have happened is we would have had an alarm, had this been in place, there would have been an alarm showing, we would have been able to find the leak a lot quicker, because that alarm coming to us saying, oh, there's a user that's using way more water than they normally do, we would have been able to identify it, shut off their water till they could get that leak fixed, rather than spend 36 hours looking for a leak, So these are some of the advantages, and there's so much more. I mean, they'll be able to see exactly, because a lot of times we'll get a call saying, I didn't use that much water, but they'll be able to go back and look and see, oh, well, that is when I watered my lawn, because it will be real time and not waiting 3 months to get a high bill and having no idea or memory of what you did 3 months ago. So it's a lot of benefits that way. It's just more efficient and better for everyone. So we're excited about this project and wish it was already, ready to be fully deployed today. But this is the plan right now and where we're at.
That's very exciting to see. I'm happy to see the timeline. So there's something official to shoot for. I do just want to note that obviously, because these folks have been eagerly awaiting this technology and have expressed frustration over the formula that's done to, the average of use between the summer months and all that, they have expressed opposition to the fee change in the bill. So I just wanted to note that for the record and appreciate your comments.
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
Ms. Rodbean.
Let me just say one more thing about that. The way that I think they want to get the discount that you can get if it's a certain month and that quarter, but sometimes their quarter doesn't fall exactly perfectly when they use the most water. So that is a code change. And I do want to say one of the things we're going to be doing is looking at all the code related to how we have to do things because of the current way we do it and the technology or lack of technology we have today, and where we can make improvements within code. So that is part of the project as well. So that is one thing on our list to look at. It really rate or not, you know what I mean? That's a process problem, not necessarily a rate problem. So just to point that out.
Thanks,
Mr.
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay. If you have a draft at any point in time on that, I know, going back to your predecessor, I had tossed around some ideas for code changes. I'd be more than happy to work on that with you. So reach
Oh,
out
thank
if you're
you.
interested.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Ms. Rodbian.
Thank you. So I think somewhere towards the beginning of the last section of your presentation, you mentioned the charter requirements for making sure that the revenue that we collect actually meets the meets the cost of the capital connection fees. And it sounds like it almost sounds like we don't really have a choice. Am I misunderstanding that? Or because, in order to actually cover those fees, if we weren't taking them in, we'd be pulling them from the general fund or from somewhere else. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of touching on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the way the charter is written, it says the utility fund has to be self-sustaining. So we cannot, the way it's written right now, you can't just have the general fund anything in utilities. So when we go into some sort of crisis mode, that's why we have this reserves in the debt service, right? Because if we go into crisis mode, we have to figure out how to pay it out of utilities. If we were to be so bad off that we needed to use the general fund money, it would be on a borrowing case, which means we borrow money from the general fund to address whatever the urgency was. And then we probably have to raise rates in order to pay back the general fund. So that's how it's written in the charter. As far as the, I don't believe this is in the charter or the code, but we have followed, and this is best practices, a 2-year debt service fund balance. So that's where we're looking. So we can pay our bills. And that's what I think I was mentioning that we do. That's our philosophy. That's what we've been following. That's how bond rating companies look at us and give us good bond ratings, because we have that 2-year debt fund balance. If we don't have it, then it starts to, question our stability as a utility. And that's when they start to charge you higher interest rates. The 2-month operating budget minimum in our reserve, that is a requirement for the operating budget, and that is in the code. And that's where I was showing you why we have to raise it 6% and 5% in future years, just to maintain that 2-month operating budget balance in our account at all times. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and just I think to follow up on that, so if we didn't raise the rates to, basically reflect the actual cost, we could, just be sort of slowly draining
Yes.
those sort of emergency and, sustained operating funds.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was trying to show, and I'm glad you understood that's what we're facing, without the rate increases.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Pickard, did you have your flag up again?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm sorry. Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the presentation. I want to say this about every department that comes in front of us. I don't think it's just you or some people said about health department. It's shocking for all of us every time we see how much every department in the county is doing. So thank you for that. With that, I do want to ask you about that biosolids, the 6 positions that you're asking for and the sort of ROI. So I guess the concern that I have, and I'll just say it outright, 10 to 20 years on an ROI is a long runway to get your money back. And so I guess where I'm looking at it is, I assume you all have some kind of modeling where you've modeled out, this is what it looks like, short-term, long-term, all of that. Because when you're talking about this $2 million savings, I'm not trying to be, adversarial, but I don't think that's real savings today necessarily. It seems like that's a savings in the future,
Correct.
provided that you do this and that this all runs out. Am I understanding that model correctly?
You're correct that the savings is if we want one, with the facility having to hire, which it's not an expense, but we would be not having to pay by Synagro the $10 million a year. So,
Okay.
but also part of that ROI is it's what's going to cost us to build it, what it's going to cost us to operate it in-house. and then the reduction in what we're paying for Synagro. It's a range of 10 to 20 years. Because we did the return on investment to decide whether we were going to do this project, there's a variety of different ways of going about this. So that's why it's such a large range. Once we've narrowed in on exactly the process, we'll be revising that and having a real number that's more specific.
Okay, so, and I guess looking at this, this is a $412,000 today recurring cost for these 6 positions, but obviously that's going to change over time. You know, those positions are going to increase. You're probably going to need more people as you sort of develop this and build it out. That's pretty typical with programs. So if you have that modeling and kind of show it to us, I'd appreciate seeing it, because I would really love to sort of cost compare what it is for you to get these 6 new positions versus to do it with the contractor, you know, and what all that looks like. Because
Right. Well, understand that with the contractor, they're raising their fees annually. But BioSol, we're paying more every year, and the increases are getting higher every. So it's, you know, used to be, oh, we're just going to do CPI, but now they're even increasing it higher. So nothing is stagnant in that, you know, yeah, today it's 412,000, but you know, same, and today it's 10.3 million for Synagro. Tomorrow, all those numbers could be different.
I get it. I saw your curbside collection slide, you know, I see the growth in those numbers. So yeah. And so kind of jumping to that for a second with the curbside collections. So obviously those are low bidder numbers. How long are these contracts for that you've entered into with these 5 regions or the service areas?
Rhodey wants to answer. I saw him take his phone. I'm gonna let him do it. I'm sure he's sick of hearing my voice.
About some waste management services, they'll be up to 10 years. So they will be equivalent in length, maximum term as the contracts they're replacing.
Perfect. Okay. And so obviously that's a big jump on the front end, but I'm assuming that the escalators throughout the 10-year life on these contracts are not 58%.
Correct. Yeah, it's really a recentering, and these are competitively bid. So those are all the contracts were awarded to the low bidders. So they actually bid a unit rate for the 3 different types of collection, and we sum those together, and that's what we show as the increase from the current costs.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, can I keep going, or is there anybody else?
Keep going.
Okay, so I'm jumping back to winter contracts for a second with the 150,000 that you're asking for. And I'm going to ask a question I don't usually ask. Is that enough? Because I hear you saying that this is sort of a placeholder, and I get it, but I've talked to some of these folks who do this work, and they'll go to Baltimore County, they'll go to other counties. There are Anne Arundel people driving way further distances because they're like, look, it's not worth it for me to be in Anne Arundel, but it's absolutely worth it for me based on what I get paid in these other jurisdictions to go there. So, I mean, look, 150,000 in the scope of our budget, that's not a big ask. That's my question. Is that really going to be enough to incentivize these contractors? Because as you all experienced, and as we heard about to a degree, and you lived, this was a major issue in the winter this year. And it's not every year, but when it happens, nobody's happy.
Right. It's what we had the stomach to request this year.
Okay. Well, what do you think you really need?
Well, there's we've looked at other things we can do in addition to that. So these are some considerations that we'll be coming back with next year. So not necessarily increasing retainer rates, although we'll look at that again to see how that plays out next year. But other things, State Highway Administration, they pay a minimum fee. So the contractors know no matter what, they're going to get paid X dollars, even if they're not called in at all. That's one thing that state is doing. We continue to look at what everyone else is doing and how they're doing it and adjust and make those requests next year. But this year, I mean, we think it'll work. That's why we're asking for it. We're hopeful, and we believe that, you know, in talking with our contractors, this is definitely going to help. But we'll just have to evaluate and see what really happens once we put it out there.
Okay. So do you think 150 is enough? That's my straight up question to you. Or do you need more? Like, if we can find more money and we can put more money into this, does that help you?
Sure, of course it does. I mean, you know,
Right.
But I know we're competing with a lot of other important things that are going on in the county.
Sure, understood. This is one-time money, right?
Yeah, well, no, it would be, once we start paying it, this will go into the base budget.
It's recurring. Okay, all right. got
Yeah,
it.
because I think once we say we're gonna, we're raising our retainer rates, we need to retain the retainer rates long-term, at that level.
Understood. Okay.
Okay. Ms. Henry, thank you very much. That was very detailed. I appreciate it. I understand all your numbers. I'm going to echo what other colleagues have said, that this is a large jump. And you and I have met several times now about connection fees and EDUs and all of those. You said that there are multiple studies coming forward for a flow factor and other things. What are the timelines for those studies to be complete?
Great question. For the flow factor study, the initial phase 1, which is looking at all the different residential types. So just so everyone knows what we're talking about, we have initiated this flow factor study in a phase approach because of all the different housing types that have been added to the code that didn't exist when we came up with flow factors. That's our number one priority because there's so much housing going on right now in the development world. So they're going to be looking at that, but also some of the primary large businesses that are frequently coming to us asking for allocations. So that's going to be done. It should be the preliminary report in October, final report in November. That's the timeline for phase 1. The full report would be next 2026. I think July 2026, if I'm not mistaken. Because once we kind of lay the groundwork there, the rest of it should be not as time consuming. Looking at the overall rates and everything, that is that we're hoping to have that before the next round of budget requests. So by spring, well, we have first, of course, have to go to the county executive. So by spring of 2026.
Okay. I share the concerns that have been said. We are looking, we all know that a major policy objective and need that we have is more housing for everyone, but also to keep that housing as affordable as possible. And we know any increases in these connection rates, they get passed on to the homeowner. But it's also, as was said, it's the small businesses that are really, I think we've all heard from small, businesses that are looking to expand in the huge costs that are coming through. And so that is all, just like we looked at a couple of years ago, we looked at school APF, and we were looking at school enrollment growth. And we found that most of our enrollment growth is coming from existing homes, not new homes. And so when we're looking at expanding schools and doing that, putting all of it onto the impact fees for new construction is really kind of unfair because much of it is coming from the older stock that's there. And so I would be interested, when you're looking at overall rates, are we accurately charging our existing businesses and homes when we come through? Because it does seem it's going to put an undue burden on everyone if all of our costs are being passed on to the new construction that's coming through when some of our older things are coming. So how can we more evenly balance this out? I tend to lean toward not having the biggest increase this year until we get these studies back and we can really look at things and understand and look at this in a more comprehensive way of where changes could be. But I fully appreciate and understand the challenges we're facing for this. And so it's complicated. Like I said, I really appreciate the very detailed look. And we'll be looking at this even further as we move forward. So, Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate my colleagues' comments. And I appreciate that this council over the last 6 or 7 years has diversified the kind of housing stock that can be built. And we've also worked through Plan 2040 and region plans. But simultaneously, year over year, over the last 4 and 5 years, our actual building permits have decreased, and they're the lowest they've been since the Great Recession. So I'd like to understand how that affects the need to increase these charges. Is that playing a role?
I mean, I think the issue is for any new growth, you know, we're paying for a new project and their projects are very expensive. So I think it all comes down to what it costs to do it. So even if it's not maybe a huge development coming in, if we and kind of that first development, so you know, if we're building out to 20 years, you know, then and we're building that now, development coming in maybe, you know, in that next 5-year range, and the rest of them are going to be paying for something that's already been built once they do connect. So it's constantly moving and changing, and it doesn't stay stagnant in that way.
Ms. Pickard, you done? Okay. All right. Are there any further questions on the operating budget? Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one more topic that I wanted to touch on, the PAYGO course correction that you all had on, I think, page 38. So I guess what I just want to understand from this is, I think historically, as I understood the county before roughly 2019, we did a lot of capital projects with PAYGO, and we tried to limit debt service. And that was one of the ways to keep debt service costs low, because debt service costs are an ongoing operating cost, and you've got to pay that with tax revenues, blah, 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 all of that, right? I think there was a bit of a shift when the current administration came in, and the environment was a little different than it had been historically. Rates were very low. I think at the end of the Shu administration, they saw the rates being low, and so they were willing to take on some more debt service too. But I think that that's been something where we've added a lot into the capital program. So when you do this PAYGO course correction, is this something where the administration is now adjusting course and saying, we're going to get back to what I have described? Maybe you don't agree with, and you can tell me if you disagree, but what I have described is sort of the more historical model in Anne Arundel County, or is this something different than that?
PAYGO is often, I mean, going back, you know, more than 10 years ago, PAYGO has been a easy place to cut because it's a big number. So auditors, different auditors that have been in that position over the years have said, oh, well, why do you need, you know, 15 million? Can't you just do it with 10? And so over the years, it keeps getting cut and cut and cut. And I think in anticipation of that, we've kind of stopped even asking for it. But we're at a point right now where we are like, look, we have to do something. This is kind of ridiculous. And I know it's easy to say we want to reduce, and you know, if you cut PAYGO so much, maybe that takes a couple of dollars off of the user rate, or you don't need to go 6%, you can go 4%. Like maybe it does have an impact. But what we're at now is that our debt service is just getting so huge, and it kind of makes no sense on these projects that really shouldn't be bond funded. They should just be paid for with cash. That's what good utilities do and stable utilities do. And so we just need to kind of correct it. We're not used to asking for a big 11 million jump on one line item in our budget. It's unusual for us, but I think it's just because over the years we should have been gradually increasing it much more. And not have to just do a big 11 million. And then next year we may need even more, and then keep raising that in order to alleviate some of the pressure, of course not all, on the debt service.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions on operating? All right, move on to capital.
All right, so on capital, I'm going to turn it over to Beth. We do have a slide on the order of things. So the deputy directors are going to present their own capital budgets, except for Chris Murphy will present for utility operations capital. And I'll be here to answer any questions as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Okay, so you guys can see that, right? Okay. So we're going to start with the general county. Alex will go through roads and traffic, and then David Braun will take over for bridges and dredging. Then Eric will follow up with the watershed protection. Then Rhodey for waste management. And like Karen said, Chris Murphy will cover water and wastewater. So Alex, do you have your slides ready? You can go and share.
Yes, I will share them here presently. Let's see. Okay. Well, first, good morning, Madam Chair, esteemed members of the council. Pleasure to appear before you today. I'm Alex Bacquier, DPW Deputy Director for the Bureau of Highways. I do have team member Nestor Flores on the call just to assist me should specific questions arise. And as Beth said, I'll begin with general county roads and traffic before turning it over to department colleagues. All right, let's see here. Sorry, I'll get to the first slide here and begin just by highlighting DPW Highway standalone projects. We have 7 in the current capital program. The forthcoming slides, I'll highlight the 5 that have funding requests in FY26. Beginning with West County Road Ops Yard, a project to replace and relocate the circa 1950s Odenton Yard due to functional obsolescence in the Odenton Town Center Transit-Oriented Development Plan. So you can see to the left an aerial of the existing facility, to the sort of middle and right, a schematic of the conceptual design for the new facility, and upper right, sort of a rendering of what that facility might look like. Funding of $2.179 million is requested in FY26 based on the current cost estimates. Oh, and I'm sorry, that was beginning on page 38. Next, I'm moving to page 200, which is Outing Avenue retaining walls. Just a quick snapshot of the current condition and one portion of the roadway, approximate area of location at Greenhaven Wharf in the middle, and a schematic design to the right showing soldier piling retaining walls due to the topography of the area, the ability to add a parking lane for adjacent residents, and then 2 travel lanes east and westbound. The projects to design and specifically and construct new retaining walls along the approach road to Greenhaven Wharf, which was renovated under a separate DRP project. And we have a funding request this year of $131,100. And that brings me to page 205, Marley Neck Boulevard improvements. And as you certainly may know, Marley Neck Boulevard has been subject to extensive development. And it has a series of changes in cross-section and lane patterns and markings. And this project's to identify the existing conditions throughout the corridor and develop design alternatives to improve the Marley Neck Boulevard operations, and specifically improve where cross-sections do not match the ultimate desired cross-section for the corridor. And our desire is to bring consistency and additional capacity and improved bike ped accommodations. We have a funding request of $191,000 in FY26 to complete design, and phase 1 construction funding of $15.563 million requested in FY27. To the right, you're seeing a schematic that gives you an idea of what the future road condition would look like, of approximately 5-foot sidewalk, and then moving into our southbound travel lanes, moving from 1 travel lane to 2, approximately 10.5-foot median in the center, and then again moving from 1 to 2 travel lanes in the northbound direction, narrow grass buffer, and then a nice 10-foot paved shared use path for connectivity throughout the area. And that brings us to page 210, Shore and Beach Road improvements. And this project began in FY22 as a highway safety improvement study, looking at the Shore and Beach Road and Triton Beach Road intersections. And these improvements may include, conceptually including bike and pedestrian improvements. Funding of $456,000 is requested in FY26, $152,000 in 27, and $2.742 million in FY28. And again, just a schematic design to the right of the slide to give you a sense of what a typical cross-section will be. Some of the area is environmentally sensitive. Some of those pathways will be off-road, and some of the corridor that will be on road in order to make the entirety of the project fit and meet our environmental compliance requirements. That brings us to page 214, which is Gamble's Road at Dicus Mill Road. And this project is to construct roadway improvements at the intersection of Gamble's Road and Dicus Mill Road, begun also under Highway Safety Improvement Study. These improvements will address current safety issues and include design and construction of new roundabout. The left side of my slide, those red circles are indicating human injury. And Nestor Flores and his team have taken mitigation actions, but we continue to have crashes and injury. In the center of the slide is the concept for a roundabout to change the geometry and approach of traffic and reduce those crashes. And to the right is just a site picture of the location. And that takes me to and concludes the standalone projects that Bureau of Highways has in the program. I'm going to shift gears to our multi-year projects, specifically our highways pavement and masonry programs. So this is a group of projects that address the overall long-term condition of the county's road network. That includes road resurfacing, road reconstruction, masonry reconstruction, our Arundel Mills LDC project, our ADA right-of-way compliance, and our state road sidewalk maintenance and repair. And if I missed one in there, forgive me. But there's no change in the program funding. They're just there to highlight those projects are continuing as programmed. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight the Highways Traffic Control Program. Again, no change in funding as they're funded at the levels within the prior approved program, except for adding funding in FY31. This overall program incorporates guardrail, traffic signal modifications, new traffic signals, neighborhood traffic control, new street lighting. We work in partnership with police department to identify where those are needed for security and safety. We have streetlight conversion. That's really about bringing more LED fixtures into the county network of 40,000 streetlights. That helps bring down costs for electricity and maintenance. Our streetlight pole replacement and developer streetlights, which is part of bringing new development infrastructure over into our inventory. And that concludes my portion of the presentation, and happy to answer any questions. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Shannon, I would just go ahead and ask.
Thank you. I just had two very quick questions. The Shoreham Beach project, is there an estimated completion date, give or take, timeline on that?
If I have Nestor on the call, I'm going to ask him to chime in on that timeline.
He is being promoted right now.
Okay.
Good morning, this is Nestor Flores, Chief of Traffic Engineering. David, I'm gonna have, I'm sorry, Alex, I'm gonna have to phone a friend because David Braun is our project manager. He'll be able to share. I apologize, Councilwoman.
No, that's okay. I understand. We can't all know everything. It's not humanly possible.
Good morning, David Braun, Engineer Administrator with the Department of Public Works. Current schedule for the Shoreham Beach Road is for construction to be completed in FY28, likely calendar year 27. That's dependent on some other things, permitting and right-of-way issues as we move forward, but that's the current schedule.
Completely understand. There are always contingencies we don't quite know, and we're planning this far out. And then I know last summer, there was a lot of coordination between the community and DPW as plans for this project kind of took shape. Are those communications still taking place? The community has been briefed. I know it's a group that tends to meet more heavily in the summer and not as much in the winter months. So just trying to take a temperature and status on those communications.
Yes, we have the schematic design meeting with the community, which is like the current step we're in. When that's done, we also have regular contact with leaders down there to discuss certain aspects as they are part of what we're working on.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Okay. Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarifying question. You mentioned sidewalks in your presentation, but that was state highway sidewalk projects, correct? And
Yes.
not the H class?
Correct.
Okay, I'll reserve my questions for later.
I will say that our masonry capital project does specifically repair and rehabilitation of existing sidewalks. So that's highways task. But anything new, any expansion, system growth, then really I'm going to pass that to David and Office of Transportation.
If I may, I would also say, Ms. Fiedler, the bulk of the H class sidewalk projects are managed or sponsored by the Office of Transportation. But if you have specific questions on any one of those, I can tell you what I need or tell you what I know or find out for you.
I can wait until you do your presentation if you'd prefer then, or.
But that's fine. I'm just saying that it's not actually part of my presentation. So if you want to talk about it now,
Understood.
we can. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just send you something offline since it's
Okay.
not part of the presentation.
Okay. Mr. Smith.
Oh, I'm sorry. Quick question. Wanted to ask about Wiggly and 175. Was there any update on there was a guardrail that we kind of put in the budget last year, and there was some state interaction that was taking place. That house just recently had another car incident where it drove through the front. It's in a very unfortunate location at a very busy intersection, and I'm grateful for the speed camera that has been placed there. In fact, every time I drive past it, I'm like, ooh, let me make sure I'm under 35. I don't want those tickets coming to me because I drive past it every single day. But is there any update on that project that was in the project last year, but I don't know if there was any movement on it?
Councilman Smith, thank you for the question. We are currently in the process of evaluating that. I expect our sort of study on feasibility to come in the June timeframe, so sometime next month. I think you were provided a response from State Highway District 5. They looked at the state road and didn't find that guardrail met their warrants for installation. We're still looking at Wiggly, which is county controlled, and whether we can do something there. There are some challenges with that site. However, I'll be perfectly honest, without the state doing the main road, which is where the source of the vehicles are coming from that are impacting that property, our ability to mitigate it is pretty limited. But we are looking at whether we can meet warrants and make some improvement with the county approach.
I think there might be a way from the Wiggly side because usually it is the traffic that comes through his fence. The majority of those incidents have occurred from eastbound traffic going westbound. So if you coming from Anne Arundel going towards county, so the Wiggly portion is the first street that you come up to at that intersection, and so if there was a way to, even if we on the Wiggly portion where a buffer or a barrier or something, like I mentioned before, it's been at least a half dozen over the last 6 years ish, certainly since COVID, that people have run through that fence. They don't use the front yard for family engagements because they're always concerned about whether or not someone is going to come through it. There's another property. This is actually in Mr. Vokey's district. off of Mountain Road. The gentleman's name is Van Valkenburg. He has a history museum in his house, and it's right there. I think it's Maryland Avenue, Maryland, and um, um, Mountain Road, and he has those wooden barriers that are in the front of it because he's had several cars come through his front yard off of Mountain Road. And so I was curious if even if we can do something similar with those wooden barriers on Wiggly side, close to the 175 intersection, just so we do something, even if the state, for some reason, I don't know why they don't think that that's an appropriate spot to put a barrier. We don't necessarily want to risk lives because the state could make up its mind on a priority. Whereas if this is something that we could just, it'll just show the effort for the community that we're taking it seriously, especially when there's evidence of interactions that have occurred on that property. So, but that's all.
Okay, no, appreciate that, Councilman Smith. I'm sensitive to that, and I did see the latest accident report come through, and we'll take a hard look at it.
No, appreciate you. And then lastly, Ms. Karen, just thank you for reaching out about the Baby Metals issue. Just truly grateful for the interaction that you've had with the community on that.
Oh, thank you.
And that's it.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to go to a project in the budget that we've talked about for years, many times. It's that Jumpers Hole Road project in the H class 586900. And again, there are two on Jumpers Hole Road, so it sometimes gets confusing. I appreciate the meeting that I think DPW had last week with some of the stakeholders, and my legislative assistant, Miss Gannon, was able to join that meeting too. I just wanted to get some confirmation from DPW on what the plan is going forward with that project in light of the concerns that were raised, because obviously there's about $8.5 million of money that is in the budget for FY26, which I think includes not just design money or planning money, but actually includes over $7 million in construction money. And I'm just trying to understand how DPW is going to move forward with construction when there seem to be some outstanding concerns about what the design is even going to be to meet the project description. So with all of that, if you can give me any insight, I appreciate it.
On that, I'll defer to David.
I'll jump in, Alex. Thanks. David Braun with the Department of Public Works. We did meet with the group that had expressed some concerns following the letter of public notice that we had sent out about the intent to install a traffic signal in an interim location at the Evening Star intersection. And as a result of that meeting, understand some of the communication issues that were lacking in our letter and how that probably did not get the full story across of what we're doing with the project. In general, the project has not changed. We're still working on all of the design portions that we had talked about and that were required, including the alternative access locations for both sides of Woodholm. That's still part of the project. We have run into some more design or some more issues with being able to obtain right of way for those alternative accesses, which is one of the reasons why we had looked to try to possibly install this signal initially to be able to get some real-time information to folks about how this was going to impact the traffic on the road. But in general, at this point, we are re-looking at the schedule of that installation. We're continuing to move forward with the project, and ultimately everything that had been included in the scope is still going to be constructed.
Okay, thank you. May I follow up just briefly, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Braun, thank you for that comprehensive and detailed answer, and it really was. I guess my follow-up question to that would be, just in terms of the funding, does it make sense to continue to have the construction funding in the FY26 budget? Does it make sense to push that to the FY27? What do you think is the time frame, sort of just in understanding the scope of the project and what DPW is actually going to be able to do in FY26?
That's probably something that I can't answer right now. I'd like, because as I said, we're working on a response to the concerns that were brought up at the meeting.
Okay.
How we put that together will likely impact when things are ready to advertise for bids, and as you say, may move a portion or some of that project out to beyond FY26. So I can't answer today, but yes, we're looking at that, and hopefully in a couple days or by next week, we'll have an answer for that.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Miss Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not a question as much as it is as a comment and a thank you. I just wanted to take the opportunity while we have Mr. Flores with us to say thank you. You've done a tremendous amount of work with Crofton residents on Rydell Road and around Crofton Parkway as well, addressing a variety of concerns, a lot of them regarding speeding and parking. And I know that those concerns are probably not going to go completely away, but I just really appreciate your partnership when my office comes to you and looking to advocate for constituents in those areas. You've done great work, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had actually lowered my hand, but that's okay. And going back to the project that Mr. Volke was referring to, I just, if there's an opportunity to get that started in the work started in 26, I would prefer to leave the money where it is. There's a lot of need. There's a lot of safety issues and concerns in that corridor, and if we could move this whole process along, it would be better. I'd hate to take away the funding and absolutely not be able to do anything in FY26 if we do that, if we push the funding. So just stating my opinion.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. The Ops Yard in Odenton, what is the time frame of that to actually have that closed and moved?
Well, I might ask Beth to help me with that. We're sort of in the procurement phase. So we still have to essentially put the project out. We've gotten through design, but that's kind of where we are on the project. We're continuing to operate the yard. We've gone through design. Project needs to go out and be awarded. And then we can get into a normal, typical 3-year cycle once we get to that point. Or really probably less than that, because we're fairly far along in design. But Beth may be able to put a finer point on that than I can.
Yeah, Beth O'Connell, Chief Engineer. Yeah, I think you're right on that, Alex. We're working with purchasing to put this out. It's actually a design build project. It's one of our largest design build projects that we've put out to date. But the design is at about an 80% level, so it's very close to being fully designed. It just needs some finishing touches. Once we bring that DB entity on board and they can start construction, I think, yeah, probably about a 2-year window. So assuming, 6 months of procurement, 2 years to do that, and then we can start, moving them out of that site and decommissioning it.
And where is the new site going to be?
It's right next to the Millersville landfill.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I know we're still looking 2+ years out. Is it any plans for what to do with that Odenton property once it's moved?
I believe the plan is to actually sell the property.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty valuable piece of property. So
sure. No, it's right there near Mark Station and things. So
right.
Looking forward to that. And then when we were talking about street things, is this where I would ask about the timeline to finish up my Maryland City street replacements?
Yes. What I'm going to do, if I may, Councilwoman, is take that back and get a firmer timeline from our payment management staff, and then respond to you with our current plan of what roads in what year and when we're going to be done in Maryland City.
Okay, because the ones that are replaced are amazing, but it just highlights even more as you drive through when you cross from one finished road onto the next,
Right.
how much, how much is needed. And everyone's really ready to have it all complete. So
Okay.
I would appreciate that timeline. Thank you.
Certainly.
So any further questions on this section? All right, continue. The next batch.
Okay. I think that's going to be me.
Okay.
David Braun, Engineer Administrator with the Department of Public Works. Let me get this. We'll talk about bridges first. The bridge projects are actually scattered through the H-class section of the budget book, which begins on page 155. The program itself, a little bit of background, we're at 88 bridges in our current inventory. There are additional 2 that are under construction by development. And once we get through those and do an initial inspection, they'll be added to our inventory. The projects that you see here for the most part, and especially the bridge replacement, deck replacement, those kind of projects are only included if they are eligible for the federal bridge program, which will pay 80% of the construction costs. And the minimum requirement of those is that there's usually at least 1 or 2 sections of the individual rating of that structure that don't meet standards. We have the requirement then is biennial. I think I've got that word right. It's every 2 years minimum to do a full inspection of each structure. Some of them are a little bit more if they have identified issues that need to be addressed on more regularly, and don't want to wait 2 years for them. Anything that's rated poor or fair, as I said, are eligible for the 80% construction funding. Currently, there are 7 bridges in the county that are eligible. All 7 of those with the poor rating are in our program, and we're currently working on getting them replaced or rehabilitated. The list of those that you see there are those 7. These are all under design. The one other I'll say is, I'm sorry, the McKendree Road project has actually been bid. We're in the process of awarding the contract, and we should be seeing construction starting on that this summer. That is one that does have a full road closure, so there's a detour associated with that. That'll be part of the, it was part of the previous meetings with the owners in the area. And when we have our pre-construction public meeting for that one, we will be reiterating that and what the detour is and how long that's expected to be in place. So the proposed budget changes this year in the bridge program. First off, there are no new project requests. So we're basically working through the designs of the projects we have. The couple I'll highlight, the Mangatee Bridge Road, most of you are aware, is under construction. We have an increase of $315,000 in FY26 to address some change orders and differing field conditions that we have found during the construction of that project. The Harwood Road Bridge is finished. The others are under design. As I said, McKendree is getting ready to go to construction. The Brockbridge Road at Little Patuxent River Bank, we completed this year. We have a give back on that. And then the Culvert Inlet Paving and Patuxent Road are also under design. Those have just recently started. One project that's not listed there that is still in the budget book is the Town Center Boulevard culvert over the a tributary of the Severn River. That's actually being removed. We won't be doing that project now. There was a significant work of some preventive maintenance that was done there that's raised the rating of that, so it's no longer eligible for the program. So that'll be taken out this year. And that is it for the bridge program. If there's any questions on that.
I have one question. It said that these projects on there are ones that currently have a poor rating, and that the construction dollars program would allow for the construction dollars if they had a poor or fair rating. Do we have any bridges that have the fair rating? Those said all poor. Do we have any that fall under the fair rating?
Yes, we do. Under a large number of them.
Okay.
It's not a small number, but the fair ones that may be eligible, none of them have met the specific criteria of specific portions of the bridge, you know, that affect structural integrity, anything like that, that have gotten down to the point where we would need to do something immediately. But that's the other reason why we do inspections every 2 years at least, to make sure that those stay in that condition.
Okay, thank you. All right, I see no further questions. Let's move on.
Okay. Next one will be me also, for dredging. The dredging program begins on page 251 of the budget book. And this program is geared to maintaining navigable depths for recreational boating along the county shoreline. There are 163 county maintained channels throughout the county, in addition to the 2 federal channels that we sometimes work with the Corps of Engineers on providing support for their work on those. Projects are only included in this budget for dredging if we actually are approved for the DNR Waterway Improvement Fund, which typically funds 50% of the design and construction costs of these projects. The new project request this year, FY26 dredging program, is on page 266. We have DNR support and recommendation of the grant funding for the 3 channels listed here: the Upper West River, Johns Creek dredging, Marley Creek, and Asquith Creek. And I'll show a little bit more on those here. This is a exhibit of where this dredging would happen. The areas outlined in blue are the actual proposed dredging limits at various depths for this. For the Upper West River and Johns Creek, this is serving a total of 181 beneficiaries between slips and boats. Based on the census, that's part of what DNR uses to determine whether it should be eligible for the state funding also. The next is the Marley Creek dredging. Again, coming up through the headwater side of the actual tidal area here. And then Asquith Creek along the Severn River, with getting its entrance channel redone also. So those were the projects that we would start in FY26. Typically, that would mean the actual dredging will occur the winter of 27-28 after all the design and permitting issues are addressed. The other project I want to highlight, our annual report on the South County Dredging Strategic Plan, which is on page 260. We had received FY25 funding for the dredging of the 3 channels that will provide the material for the first phase of this work. That dredging will happen this upcoming winter. FY27 funding is including then the detailed grading and creation of the beneficial reuse portion for the first site that we're talking about recreating, regenerating down in the area. And just as a reminder, what we've identified as 5 sites along the South County area between the Parker, Cars, and Broadwater Creek area that look like they would be suitable and good opportunities to provide regeneration of areas that have had severe erosion over the last century plus. These 3 channels, based on the material movement along the coastline there, are having to be dredged about on the average of every 7 years, as opposed to most of the channels in the county, which can go 15 to 20 years without a problem. So there's a lot of material that's been coming out of here, and we were looking for something to do with that instead of just placing it in a material placement site. So these 5 sites were identified as sites to look at, to discuss with permitting agencies as to what we can do there. We had selected site 1 as the initial site that's going to be used with the funding that I had mentioned previously, that were underway, primarily for 2 reasons. 1, relatively easy access, and 2, it's owned by the county. So we don't have to go through property acquisition, easements, anything like that to make this happen here. So the area of this first containment site is this area that's labeled as Cape Ann on this map, that the county owns. This is a rough site plan of what's going to be proposed, including providing all of the dredged material in this area, being able to create some small hills and hummocks and low areas to provide a area of natural vegetation and different kinds of vegetation and conditions even within this area based on the elevation of the water in the area. We'll also include the benches out along the coastline to help prevent future erosion through here. So that project, the soil should be starting to be deposited there this winter when the dredging is done on those 3 channels. And then in FY27 is when we'll start actually creating the detailed layout of all of this, as well as doing the benches out front. The remainder of the dredging program is relatively consistent, adding FY31 funding to the multi-year projects, and some small givebacks on the projects that have been completed. The last 2, the FY24 and FY25 dredging, both have additional costs that have been identified in the recent cost estimates based on the work that's going to be required and getting through the permit agencies as we move forward with those. And that is the end of the dredging presentation.
All right. Do I have any dredging questions? Don't see any hands. All right. Next.
All right, I think I'm next up. I'm Eric Michelson, Deputy Director of the Bureau of Watershed Protection and Restoration. Let me see if I can pull my presentation up here. Okay, all right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'll be discussing the B class today. This is the stormwater and environmental restoration projects, essentially to satisfy the county's clean water regulatory goals under the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, as well as our MS4 stormwater permit. And it involves the design and construction of watershed restoration projects, as well as climate resilience efforts around our infrastructure and protecting the natural environment. This is just the regulatory language from our stormwater permit. Requires about 3,000 acres of impervious surface treated through the 5-year lifespan of our permit. A summary of the request for FY26 is that we have added 2 new project requests. Jabez 3 construction, which is builds upon the significant investment that Maryland Department of Natural Resources made on Jabez branch over the course of the last couple of years. This project is in the interchange between Route 32 and Route 97 and drains immediately into that project, where the Resilience Authority and DNR spent quite a bit of money. And then we've got the Little Patuxent Odenton Natural Area Restoration. This is a project that we've been working on with DNR staff again. Has to do with the area around the Oxbow feature near the Russet community, which is a tributary to the Little Patuxent and which has been degrading for a number of years and is a huge wetland natural resource, and we're working to protect that area. Overall, the total request is about $3 million above our recurring programmed request, and that's primarily because we were entering into construction phase of a number of projects that have been in the pipeline for a while, and there's, we're requesting that money so we can move to construction here fairly soon. Of that, though, about $500,000 is outside grants from the DNR Trust Fund. And then we also received $1.4 million associated with a PCB legal settlement with Monsanto. So that's adding to an existing fund that was created a couple of years ago in the capital program. And our FY26 funding continues to provide money for the county's grant program with the Chesapeake Bay Trust, as well as our innovative full delivery of water quality improvements program, which has been very popular. And our grant program for the second year in a row now includes a $200,000 request for design and permitting, which is something that a lot of the nonprofits we've been interacting with have requested to keep projects in the pipeline. In terms of a project by project request, our first request is B55-1600. This is our culvert enclosed storm drain rehabilitation project. We're asking for $8 million this year, which is an increase over previous years. That's primarily driven by the fact that there's been significant inflation in the construction costs for that work. We recently, in the last year or so, rebid a 5-year contract that we have, which is what we use for most of that work to get accomplished. And the costs for that contract were significantly inflated beyond where they had been 5 years prior, which, is understandable given the market conditions and that sort of thing. So we're seeing that across the board, and that's an explanation for sort of why there's some of these increases in these annual projects. B55-1700, our emergency storm drain project. Again, we're asking for $4 million here. This is for our ability to respond to sort of emergency issues as they occur with regards to the closed storm drain system or culverts or other kinds of issues that could be driven by large-scale storm events. B55-1800, our storm drainage and stormwater management infrastructure project. We're asking for a little bit over $2 million here. This is our countywide account for being able to do water quality and infrastructure blended projects as those come up. I'll talk about a couple specific instances of projects completed through that project a little bit later on in the presentation. B56-1100 is our WPRP restoration grant program. Like I say, this is the program that we have run through the Chesapeake Bay Trust for about a decade now. Been very heavily utilized by our nonprofit community to accomplish projects in communities or in areas that are assisting the county with achieving its compliance goals. B56-8300, which is our public-private performance of water quality improvement program. Again, we're asking for $2 million, which is what we requested for the past several years. That's allowed us to accomplish a number of projects at a significantly reduced price and accelerated implementation timeframe. And again, has been something that's been very popular among folks who are bidding on county projects. The next 3 projects here are all projects where we're requesting money for construction phase services, as I mentioned before. B55-2200 is Magathi River Stream Segment 03. That's Mill Creek. So this is the area that runs down from Joyce Lane through the community college campus and ultimately down to the Magathi River. We've done a lot of work in that area already, and this is sort of the crowning piece of that once that's accomplished. B55 4800 Patapsco Tidal Stream Restoration 07. This is for work in Marley Creek. So this actually dovetails with nicely with the dredging work that David presented earlier on. We're basically working up around Marley Station Mall and the surrounding vicinity to do a significant amount of stream and wetland restoration work up there in an area that's been, historically fairly neglected. B55 6700 Little Patuxent Outfalls. This is a $5.4 million request for work in the stormwater outfalls, basically draining the Russet community. So again, this dovetails with that Little Patuxent new project in terms of being upstream of that area. And an area, again, where there was developed with sort of historical stormwater regulations that weren't necessarily very protective of the natural areas downstream of the development itself. B55 9700s, South River Stream Restoration 04. This is for Glebe Branch. We're asking for $1 million. This runs from South River Colony north through the South River High School campus. That project is pretty close to initiation. It's going to be accomplished actually in several phases, but we're very close to construction on that one. B57 1600 Seven River Outfalls. We're asking for $104,000. This is for Upper Cowhide Branch, which is the reach that runs from Annapolis Mall down towards the Weems Creek on the Severn River. The county completed a Lower Cowhide Branch project there a number of years ago at the intersection of Jennifer Road and Admiral Drive. And that project has been pretty successful. B58 2500 Clark Station Road Resilience. We're asking for about $1.5 million for this project, which is primarily a stormwater collection and conveyance project. Discharges into the headwaters of the Severn River near the intersection of Burns Crossing and Clark Station Road, and is a project that has been in the pipeline for a while now. B58 8900. This is the $1.4 million for the PCB monitoring and remediation. In that account now, we've got a significant amount of funding. We're actually working with UMBC to continue to search out the PCB hotspots, particularly in North County and Sawmill Creek, other areas draining towards the Baltimore Harbor, and also in the Little Patuxent. And this funding will likely be utilized for remediation efforts when we whittle those down in terms of hotspots for PCBs. Again, like I say, all of the funding in this project at this point is the result of outside legal settlements. B59 4400 Little Patuxent Odenton Natural Area. We're asking for $1 million. This is for the initial construction of that project, like I say, near Russet in the Oxbow Natural Area. And then B59 4500, this is the Severn River Jabez 3 construction. So we've designed this project through B55 1800, and this is for a dedicated construction amount, $3.2 million, to be able to build that project in the next year or so. Like I said, the B55 1800 countywide stormwater management project has allowed us to have some flexibility and do some pretty interesting, thoughtful projects, I think. On the left is the Hidden Point Wetland Project. This is in St. Margaret's. This one actually was piggybacked with some work that the Bureau of Engineering and Highways were doing with regards to shoulder widening projects, as well as some flood abatement on Pleasant Plains Road. This is one where the community was very, very concerned about the prospects of additional stormwater running into Burley Creek as a result of those other road associated projects. And so our ability to move quickly on this one and work with a local landowner who was a sod farm property owner allowed us to do a wetland project on his property to be able to treat a lot of that stormwater runoff and be able to also reduce runoff from the sod farm into Burley Creek, help make those other projects go a lot more smoothly. On the right-hand side is Lake Waterford Wetland Project, which was recently completed. This was an area where we had a good working relationship with Rec and Parks. They basically had an underutilized parking area. There was lots of runoff coming down B&A Boulevard from some of the like landscape industrial users on that area. Magathie River Association was very concerned about the impacts to the spawning perch in that area. We were able to work over a couple of years to basically design and install a stepped wetland in the area where that old parking lot had been. And now we've got a feature that's capturing runoff coming down B&A before it gets into the Magathie River, and has been, just implemented for, I don't know, 6 months maybe now. And already we've gotten a lot of accolades from folks who are keeping a close eye on that part of the Magathie River watershed. Our restoration grant program, like I say, continues to be really successful and very heavily utilized. A couple projects here that I'll just highlight. The Hillsmere Living Shoreline Project. Hillsmere has been a incredible community in terms of basically going back into their developed landscape, doing what they can on community property to protect water quality in the South River and take steps to provide educational efforts. This was a living shoreline that they built in front of the bulkhead, or excuse me, the revetment at their marina. Involves reef balls that you can see here, and is a pretty neat project, a demonstration sort of for how this work can be done in a retrofit context. On the right-hand side, that's photographs of a project at the Edgewater Police Station. There were a couple of efforts there. One was ripping out the old helipad, which was not being used, so removing some impervious surface and then going in and refreshing and expanding some of the stormwater bioretention areas on that site. So all that work has been completed. Was a county property, but was a situation where the police department didn't have the budget to be able to do that. So we were able to work with one of our grant partners to basically do that work on county property, which was pretty cool. That's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions that you all have, or to to respond to any comments. Thanks.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? I'm looking for hands up. Not seeing anyone.
Amanda has her hand up. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Trying to scroll through everybody. So, Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you. Mr. Michelson, thank you for that presentation. I loved seeing the St. Margaret's photo in there, and just want to thank you for all of the work that you have put into that project. I know it has been a huge effort, and a lot of communication with the community and the property owner. I have a question on an old project that came up at a recent community meeting. I'm fine if you have to get back to me after this meeting, but Winchester on the Severn had a project done a few years ago. And at a recent Broadneck Council of Communities meeting, one of the residents in that community expressed concern over lack of curbing that was supposed to be done. And as a result, runoff is going into that project. I have been through that community since, and it does seem like there is some curbing being done, and I don't know if it's related to that issue or not.
So I'll reach out to you and get more details. But if it's what I'm thinking about, actually, the area where the project was installed, which is a very steep sort of outfall project, was intended essentially to get runoff directly off the road, because there's not really like a curb and much of a proper curb and gutter system in that community. But I can have staff take a look at it to make sure that there's not any kind of erosion or other issues that are associated with that. But I'm happy to dig into the details as well.
Okay, we can follow up after the hearing today. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Day, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, Ms. Day, Assistant Director. I could actually provide a little insight on that. Our road ops team did go out and install that curb recently. We installed as much as we could without affecting the design and needing to go back to watershed to redesign. So we're going to just, I guess, review it after the next few storms to see if it's accomplished what we need it to.
Perfect. I was hoping that's what that work was for, so I appreciate it.
And they're working with Miss Noon on that. So yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Mr. Smith.
Be brief. Mr. Mickelson, thank you. Any status update on Lake Marion up there in the provinces?
Yeah, the project is essentially completed. I believe they're doing planting this spring, and there's a bridge that's going to be installed, a pedestrian bridge that's going to be installed, I think, again, in the next month or so. My understanding is that the community would like to have a ribbon cutting. Obviously, would be great to have you there. I'm intending to show up. So I think that project's moving along just very smoothly. I get regular updates from Arundel Rivers Federation, who's been executing it. Cindy Williams seems like she's very satisfied with how that's gone. And yeah, that project has been a long time coming, but I'm really glad to see it in the ground. And I think there'll be an official sort of, like I say, ribbon cutting here before too long.
And I think the last piece is from Ms. Henry. I'll plant the seed in your head for a meeting in the future. Water tower for the provinces. That discussion when it came to the increased rates and stuff like that. But just wanted to have a sidebar conversation at some point in the future about it.
You mean not just the water tower, but you mean water service changeover?
Yes, the one that's there. Yes, to
Okay.
talk about that process.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Scrolling through everyone. I've seen about those questions. Mr. Michelson, the Oxbow at Russet, when is that's been in the books and in the planning for a while. When should we see that project begin? So work start there.
Yeah, I would. We actually worked with DNR to do sort of like a temporary fix there that's been in place now for a little while. I think in terms of construction of that project, I would suspect we're looking at later in 2026 at this point.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. All right. Is there someone else up?
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just had a very quick question. The project off of Crofton Parkway, Beaver Creek, am I getting the name of the creek right? Thank you.
Yes.
Has that pretty much concluded at this point? I just was curious. Every now and then I still get a couple questions in the community about it. So I was just hoping to get a quick little update on that.
Yeah, it's basically wrapped up. We put signage, 2 installations of signage there, one off of the parkway and then one closer to 424. There's actually a pedestrian path that was created as part of the project that sort of connects the 2 roadways that seems to be pretty well utilized. I was out there 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the site's really started to green up. Seems to be pretty vibrant with life. But if you get any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's been planted in conjunction with Arlington Echo, as well as obviously our contractor did some plantings, but the school kids did some plantings last fall, and those are really coming in as well. So I think, in the next month or so, it'll continue to green up, obviously through the summer. And in some respects, I'm surprised at how quickly it's really transformed, given that it was, basically installed about less than a year ago at this point. So, but if you get questions, please direct them to me.
Most of them have just been very simple, timing wise, if that sort of thing. But you have been amazingly responsive throughout that project when the community has expressed questions and concerns. So I definitely greatly appreciate that. And it was fun. I actually drove by in the course of my daily activities the day that the kids were out there doing planting. So it was really cool to see just what a great way to integrate so many different parts of our community into a really beneficial project. So thank you for all the work that was done for that.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. There are no further questions. Next up.
Good morning. Let me share my screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Good morning, Madam Chair and council members. I'm Rody Holthouse, Deputy Director, presenting the 2026 Waste Management N class request. I think I'm joined by Steve Kraychek, our Operations Administrator, and Crystal Harding, our Administrative and Financial Services Manager here as well. The end class begins on page 351 of the budget book. And I have a lengthy slide deck, but I will streamline it for this morning. But I hope you have the full slide deck for your files. I will go through very briefly all the projects that have funding in the 6-year program, and spend a little bit of time talking about some program drivers. So we're looking, when we frame our capital requests, we're really looking at a couple of main themes: extending the life of our infrastructure, increasing capacity. So we look at our 10-year solid waste management plan for needs. We're also obviously very in tune with regulatory requirements, and those continue to emerge, but we're always working to meet them, and also enhancing our facilities just to meet customer demands and needs and programmatic needs and other emerging needs in our area of work. So with that, I'm going to spend time just going through a quick summary on page 352 of the end class. So I guess a bit of good news: the FY 2026 request is $515,000, which is a $925,000 reduction from the FY 2026 amount in the council program approved program. So that's good news. The decrease is mainly due to a project that's in construction and some give backs that we've identified. So I'll talk more about that. And also, we are asking for a $1.7 million increase from the Solid Waste Financial Assurance Fund, and I'll spend a little bit more time talking about that for our maintenance of closed landfills project. I also have 2 new project requests for FY 2031, so those will be in the new program year. And the result of those 2 new project requests is to increase the amount of the 6-year program by about $4.4 million. So we think that's well within our limits of affordability. So my first project is on page 354 of the book. It's the N422700 solid waste project planning. So the end class has this dedicated project to do planning and preliminary engineering. And again, you've heard me say this in the past. I think this is why we're so successful. We have this ability to scope a lot of our projects before we get into the actual design and construction. So it's paid dividends is in my estimation. So some of the notable work we've completed this year: capital replacement schedule for our landfill gas to electricity project, which is now almost 14 years old, believe it or not. We've done a disposal capacity expansion study, and and I'll talk more about this. We've characterized our leachate in terms of some of these new compounds that we're looking for, the forever chemical compounds. And we have some notable plan work for next year, looking at new and expanded capacity for our residential drop-offs that we call recycling centers, and also looking at our very successful composting facility and some of the capabilities and options we might have in the future with regard to that existing project. So we're asking for $125,000 in FY 2026 for those planning needs. N526900 on page 355 is our solid waste renovations project. So this is our multi-year project. We're asking for funding for FY 2031, consistent with the program. And again, the solid waste enterprise cares for all of its own infrastructure, including roads, buildings, water, sewer, mechanical, everything. So this request in FY 2026 will take care of some important things. The roof replacements for our blower flare station, which is the central facility at the landfill campus in Severn, where all the landfill gas is collected and piped into our landfill gas to electricity facility. We're also doing some pavement management and pavement striping and signage redesigns at our facilities, following the model that you've heard from Alex and the Bureau of Highways. We're looking to eke out all the life we can from our pavements by following the same kinds of treatments, the right treatment at the right time, and that's working well for us. And we're also looking to renovate the employee building at our Southern Recycling Center in Deal. My next project is on page 356, the N578800 Millersville Landfill Subcell 9-3 design and construction. So again, this is the third phase of our Cell 9 disposal area development, and the construction is in progress, as you can see in the photo. There are no scope and timing changes. However, we did very well with the bids. We awarded to a low bidder, which happens to be a company out of Baltimore County. They're doing a very good job, but we're asking to decrease the construction funding by $2.8 million in FY 2026 based on actual costs. So we expect this project to be finished probably in the first quarter, if not the second quarter of FY 2026. So we're doing well out here at this point. The next project is N581900 Millersville Landfill Cell 9 Landfill Gas Design and Construction on page 357. So this project is used to complete the phase design and construction of the landfill gas capture and collection system, which is required by federal and state regulations. So I call it phase development because we follow the landfilling operation with the construction of either temporary landfill gas horizontal collectors or permanent landfill gas extraction wells, vertical extraction wells. So on this project, we're requesting to add $43,000 to FY 26, which is really for design and overhead, and we're reducing FY 28 and 29 by $86,000 for a net reduction in the program of $43,000. My next project is N584200 Maintenance of Closed Landfills on page 358. So some of the council members may remember we created this project a few years ago. I think it was fiscal 22, and we appropriated $500,000 at that time from what's called the Solid Waste Financial Assurance Fund. So the Solid Waste Financial Assurance Fund is a fund that was set up in the early 90s. We make a contribution each year. The plan being that current users of the landfill pay for future liabilities. So the closure costs that come at the end of a landfill disposal cell's life, and then maintenance thereafter for 30 years are funded by the users that use that landfill. So now we have this dedicated fund for those purposes. And next year, we're asking to appropriate $1.67 million to take care of some areas of repair on top of the closed cell 9. And you can see in the photo, there's a number of small areas outlined in yellow where we've had some erosion and some sloughing of soils. So we want to make those repairs. We did a study this year to identify repair areas and repair techniques. And that was completed by EA Engineering, and we're asking for the funding to make those repairs next year. My next project is N590800 Millersville Landfill Resource Recovery Facility Maintenance Building Upgrades on page 359. The approved program includes $3.9 million in FY 28 and FY 29 to renovate and update the maintenance building at our main campus in Severn, and it's much more than a maintenance building. It actually has employee offices, in addition to the maintenance bay, maintenance bays, a welding area, lube room, parts storage and inventory room, all those types of things. We're asking for additional project funding totaling $12,000 in 2028 and $4,000 less in 2029 for a net increase of $8,000. So this is really just a housekeeping type of change. N590900 is Millersville Landfill Subcell 9.4 Design and Construction on page 360. This is our next planned phase of Cell 9 development, and it's currently programmed for design in FY 29 and construction in FY 2030. And we are asking to reduce those amounts in 29 by $127,000 and construction in FY 2030 by $995,000. And obviously, this is a placeholder for the future, so the project timing may change. But again, we're seeing as the picture and the design requirements come into more focus as we continue to develop in this area, we are able to refine our cost estimates, and we wanted to recognize that in the capital program accordingly. So my next slide is on some emerging regulatory requirements, and we've talked about it in a couple different contexts this morning. The forever chemicals, or the polyfluoroalkyl substances. So this is a slide from MDE, but I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about how these substances in consumer products are affecting us or likely to affect us in the solid waste business. So again, these are materials, substances that have been used in a lot of consumer products. So stain and water resistant fabrics, carpeting, cleaning products, all those types of things. So we've all been exposed to them, and they're in the products that we use. Well, it's important to us here because they're in the products that are discarded. Whether they're recycled or disposed, we're handling them. So we're trying to make allowances in our capital program to deal with some of these impacts. So the first one, which probably makes a lot of sense, N594200, our new request on page 361, because we are collecting wastewater out of our landfill cells and sending it to our sister facility, which is the Patuxent Water Reclamation Facility. We are planning to do a retrofit to our on-site treatment to remove PFAS compounds from the wastewater that we eventually ship to the wastewater treatment facility. So we're asking for $2.8 million for design in FY 2031 for that purpose. And again, these are new requirements, and I know our folks in the wastewater treatment business in DPW are watching and waiting for MDE to formulate some of those requirements. So we're sort of watching that as well, but we wanted to get this project into the program at this stage because we think it's coming. And finally, my last project is N594300 Millersville Water Transmission Main on page 362. So again, similar to what I just mentioned, this would be a placeholder for any of our needs, requirements to provide safe drinking water to our neighbors. So starting this year, we're required to monitor for these new compounds, these PFAS compounds in groundwater, surface water, and wastewater. And again, this project would be a placeholder to extend the public water system to the area surrounding the landfill if it ever becomes required. Actually was a contingency project that was funded in the 1990s that was never built. So this really restores that, reestablishes that. So we're asking for $2.2 million for design in FY 2031. And that is the end of my slide deck, but I'm happy to take any questions about these projects or requests or just anything in general.
Okay. All right, hold on. Turning my camera back on. Miss Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that presentation. I think your last slide pertains to the question that I'm going to ask. It's my understanding that the county will or has a capital project number to re-drill private wells if there's contamination in the well from a county property. Is this part of that solution, this project here?
Yeah, I would say yes. So what the county adopted a very friendly strategy more than 30 years ago. So we monitor groundwater in a network of wells all around the county landfill campus and off-site, on surrounding properties. And we also monitor private drinking water wells within that network. So what we have done historically, again, for over 30 years, is if we find any evidence of volatile organic compounds that look like they could have come from the landfill, even if they don't exceed any safe drinking water levels, we offer a replacement well, and we've done that. So that doesn't mean the water is not fit to drink, but just as a sort of consumer confidence kind of a thing, we've offered to drill a deeper well and provide, all of that at no cost to the homeowner. So that's what we've continued to do. So I think this is more of a contingency if that strategy could no longer work or be applicable because of these new compounds that everyone's is worried about and looking for, then we would have the sort of the next option of offering public water.
Okay. That is helpful information. Do you know off the top of your head what the cost has been to the county year over year on those private well new drilling of wells?
It's ranged over time. I think at this point it's about $100,000 because we not, and that's not just for the well. We have to do some property work first. We have to establish easements and do some agreements with property owners, and then we install the wells, and that's done contractually. But we also put in a treatment system along with that. So I think about $100,000 is probably a good number. We do budget that in our operating budget, and that's been pretty consistent over those decades. And we've replaced 38 wells since 1995. So.
Thank you for that. I thought it was going to be a higher figure, so I appreciate that number.
All right. Any further questions? I don't see anybody else's hand raised. So onward. What's next, Miss Henry?
Last but not least is our water and sewer. So we turn it over to Chris Murphy. He's our utility engineer administrator.
Yeah, hi. I'm Chris Murphy. I'm the engineer administrator in charge of utility engineering. I'm going to present to you the water and wastewater class projects today. I've consolidated the entire CIP down to 27 slides. So there's a lot more in there, but I think these are the most critical ones that I want to go over with you. I think we had a lot of good discussion earlier about costs and things of that nature. I just want to focus in on one thing. This is just an example of some of our assets that we have. So looking at our water and our sewer piping and our pump stations and our water storage tank projects, they all sort of have a certain life cycle associated with them. And water and sewer piping, 75 years, as I think we covered before. We have some pipes that are 100 years old. It's not really all of them. Our average age for our pipes is around 40 years. So it's it's sort of midlife. And so if you did a straight line at the 75-year replacement on the $4 billion of assets, we would need to be putting in $62 million a year. Our system is a little bit younger on that approach, but it's starting to age. It's aging. So our current request for FY26, just as an example, is $47 million. For pumping stations, it's $22 million. And for storage tank, and then this is just painting, is on par. It's about $3 million with what the request should be. Again, the replacement on the paint on the water tanks is about once every 15 years. So we'll just go through. So I'm going to start focusing in on these highlighted projects. This is not every project. We have at any given time we have about 350 different contracts going on within the water and the sewer class projects. I'm going to go over the sewer class projects first, and we'll go through each one of these one by one. The first one up is the Water Strategic Plan. This is S77-6700. It's a multi-year project. It's on page 374. Our request in FY26 is $322,000. FY27 is $1.3 million, and then ongoing it'll be $150,000. The FY26 request is mostly to make sure that we have enough money to finish and complete everything that we need to do for that flow factor study, and also that we have funds available. We're doing a utility allocation system upgrade for the software. And then the FY27, we're actually going to kick off a new wastewater strategic plan for the system. We do these about once every 10 years, and it's time that we need to take a look at these. And then there's also money in there for the utility allocation system software upgrade. S802300. This is our WRF infrastructure upgrade retro project. These are typically smaller projects that happen at our wastewater treatment plant. This is a multi-year project. We're asking for $12.6 million in FY26, $13.242 million in FY27, and then ongoing from FY28 on about $3.3 million. The ongoing is based off of our historical spend rate. The FY26 and 27 are based off projects that we actually have sort of the preliminary designs done or they're in design. Just to highlight some of these projects that we have is the Annapolis odor control project. We're asking for money within that FY26 request for that. There's other things like the Patuxent WRF Phase 1 improvements, Patuxent backwash equipment. We got our Bodkin Point condition assessment is in there. And then we also need to go and look at doing all of our switching device, electronic switching and power system devices at the treatment plants. They're all starting to age out too. So S806700. This is our Cinder Cove force main rehab project. This is our major, we often call this the cross-country force main. This is our major feed that goes into Cox Creek. It's twin 36-inch force mains. We finished most of the force main rehab on this project. However, there was noticed that there were a few valves and air relief valves that still needed to be that were getting to the end of their useful life and still need to be replaced. So we're asking for $2.6 million for that to replace those valves. S807300 is our Annapolis WRF upgrade project. This is a multi-phase project. We're finishing off phase 2. It's currently in construction. The next phase is to replace the emergency power system and controls. It was noticed we had a tropical storm back in 2020 that when the power shut off, we had a backup feed that wasn't working, and then we also had our generator. When the power went out, systems were not able to come up in time to prevent an SSO. So we've since got the backup feed connected. That's all working just fine. But this is actually to go in and start replacing how the emergency system comes back online when we do lose power. Let's see, the next one is S807600, which is our Piney Orchard SPS and force main project. This will actually consolidate our Piney Orchard treatment plant and tie it into the Patuxent system. So it's a Patuxent plant. So basically, it's going to consolidate and decommission this treatment plant. We're asking for no money in FY26, but $15.8 million in FY27. This is eligible for Bay Restoration Fund money. We'll be reapplying for that in January to get BRF money for this. We are doing this as design build. Right now, we're procuring the owner's advisor for this project. S809900. This is our BioP treatment treatment removal project. Part of the driver on this one is the price of the chemicals to remove the phosphorus out of the system have been increasing steadily. What you can do with it's called BioP or EPRP. You can actually do a side stream of some of the good bacteria, the good bugs that eat up the phosphorus on the side, and then what you can do, you have a tankage there, and then as the wastewater goes through the treatment process, you can advantageously put those bugs back into the system to eat up all the phosphorus, saves on chemical load addition, and saves the county money. So in FY26, we're asking for $893,000 to implement this at one of our treatment plants. If that's successful, then we will do an FY28. We'll design it for the rest of our treatment plants and with a final implementation everywhere in FY30. S81000, our Manage After Recharge project. I think we had Councilwoman Fiedler and Ledbetter out there to take a look at this at our pilot system that we have at the Patuxent plant. This is to essentially take our wastewater flow that comes out of our Patuxent plant right now, and what the pilot is doing, it's taking the effluent out of the wastewater plant treating it with advanced water treatment and turning it back into drinking water quality. And then we would be putting that back into the ground. We had recent legislation passed, Senate Bill 930, House Bill 1296 for the state of Maryland, that allows us now to do a pilot project. So we're currently evaluating locations within the county where it would be best to do. We currently pull about 39 million gallons of water out of the ground every day for our drinking water. We've noticed that our drinking water levels in our aquifers are dropping. We have sort of long-term concerns, so we want to do this project to complete the water cycle and to have long-term, ensure that we have long-term availability of water. It also will reduce pollutants to the bay. The MAR system, the pilot system so far has shown a major reduction in PFAS and also a major reduction in pharmaceuticals and microplastics and everything like that. So again, we'll be creating drinking water and putting that back into the ground. S810-100 is our minor system upgrade. This is looking at our mobile home parks, mostly located within the southern part of the county. Listed on here: Boone's Estates, Holiday Estates, Lions Creek, Maryland Manor, Patuxent Mobile Estates, Waston's Woods. And there's also Holiday Estates and potentially Patuxent Mobile Estates, which are more towards the northern part of the county, and Summer Hill. Patuxent Mobile Estates is down in the south part of the county. What we're doing is we're looking to tie these to either construct small treatment plants or for Summer Hill and Holiday Estates, they'll be sent with a pump station into our existing system. We've had preliminary talks with MDE, Bay Restoration funding should be available for these projects, and we've had preliminary conversations that about 75% of this work would be covered with BRF funds. Next up is S810-200, which is our biosolids facility. I think there was talk recently in Karen's presentation about the importance of the biosolids project. One of the drivers with current regulation, there's been a push to reduce land application of biosolids. Along with that is a reduction of PFAS. So we're getting driven towards this type of project. And this, we're going to be taking sort of a stepped approach. So we'll be asking for $20.6 million in FY27 to construct a demonstration facility. And then we will do a full-scale facility in FY31 and beyond. And this will basically, it turns the biosolids into a biochar product, which can be anywhere similar to a sand or sort of a soil amendment, and it destroys all the PFAS along with this, and it will allow us to be able to have a product that we can use in other ways and be able to destroy the PFAS. Let's see. Next up is our X764-200 wastewater project planning. We're asking for $4.5 million in FY26, $1.3 million in FY27, and $1.2 million in FY28, and then ongoing $700,000. This is our budget for where we do our preliminary planning for some of our major capital projects. In here currently we have our sewer asset management program. We're doing a major redesign of our asset management program, and so this is the sewer portion of it. Also in here is our water program. We're also doing evaluations of our broadwater system and broadwater collection with our broadwater treatment plant and our broadwater collection system. And we're also doing our sewer utility benchmarking study, which looks at how our plants are operating, compares those against industry benchmarks, also compares those against each other, and it helps us recommend projects that we might be able to do to increase the efficiency of the treatment plants and reduce costs to the county. The next one is Z5-33200. This is our routine sewer extension project. Typically, these are for petition projects. It allows for us to do small utility extensions up to $1.5 million. As you may or may not know, petition projects need to be self-supported. So any money spent in here on petition projects will be end up being reimbursed back into the utility fund. And with that, that is everything on the wastewater side. So I'll stop there. I know it was kind of fast to see if you guys have any questions on wastewater.
Mr. Volkey.
Sorry, unmuted. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Murphy, thank you for the presentation. So with respect to the biosolids, I'd asked some questions to Ms. Henry during her presentation about those 6 new positions. And then obviously you've got in your presentation the cost of the $20 million for the demonstration facility plus the total project cost being $112 million. Are those costs factored into the modeling that you did with those positions when you then looked at the Synagro and tried to come up with the cost savings and all of that?
Yeah, the 112 million. Yes, I'm not going to answer it, Chris. The 112 million for the total project cost was factored into the return on investment.
Okay.
These costs do not include operating because it's capital. So would be separately funded, but we have looked at what the operating costs compared to what we're paying now and what would it cost to operate this plant once the demonstration, and then again when we get the full scale. That's what we're looking at for the positions being cheaper than hiring out the people other people to operate it.
Okay, yeah, so I guess that's what I'm looking to see is the aggregate cost, like how all of that has been
both
factored
together. Yeah, understood. We're going to get that for you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anybody else's hand raised.
I'll add another question then, if nobody else.
Okay, go for it, Mr. Volkey.
Thank you. Can we talk about the recharging of the aquifer again?
Sure.
That is a big price tag of $70 million on that. So that looks like it's not really, I mean, it is in somewhat of the out years, right? It's in 29, so it's not immediate, but this is a significant cost that's into the CIP over the next couple of years. So how confident are we that this is going to do exactly what you want it to do to spend this amount of money on it?
So this is actually, they do this in Virginia. They do it actually in similar aquifers that our aquifers are. They do this in Florida. They do it in California. So it's been done elsewhere in the U.S. So this is, this will be our initial step will be a demonstration facility size, which will be injecting about 0.5 MGD into the ground. And right now we have a pilot on the water treatment side, just a small pilot so that we can understand and optimize the treatment processes. And the results on that are what I'll say fantastic. They're removing all the PFAS. There's I guess part of the optimization is trying to figure out it's a multi-treatment system, and part of that system is granulated active carbon, and that carbon really captures all the PFAS stuff that goes through, and there's a certain amount of time that you need to do to figure out how long you can run the carbon before it's used up, and then you get to replace the carbon. So we're seeing about 4 months time frame to replace the carbon on just a little pilot system that we're running. We're also going to be evaluating other types of treatment with it over the next couple of years. So I think we're positive it's going to do what we think it's going to do. It's just right. It needs to be economically feasible for us to do it. But then you weigh it in. If you look at, we have concerns because we can see the aquifer levels are dropping along the way. And these things often have a very long time frame to actually get up and running. And so, we're probably really looking more to the neighborhood of 10 years before we have 8 to 10 years before we actually have a full system in play.
Okay, appreciate that. So I guess, and I understand the activated carbon concept on a small scale, right? Because that's how your water treatment system usually works at home, is that you use the same thing. So I'm following that. I have those. I think the question that I would have next is, so how, like with respect to the aquifer, I mean, this may be a dumb question and you can say that. how much of the county's water supply is this actually going to impact? Like, what is the size of the aquifer? Is this feeding the entirety of what you're pulling up and using for public service, or?
Yeah, so our entire system is groundwater driven.
Okay.
It's all groundwater provided. All those 40 MGD that we pull out of the ground is coming it's coming from the ground. It's not coming from the surface reservoirs or anything like that.
Sure. Okay. And so with that, if you were to do this project, this $70 million investment over the next 8 to 10 years, the concept is this is going to give you a renewable source of pulling out of the aquifer so that you can extend the life of the aquifer and therefore keep providing public service. Am I following all that?
Yeah, so sort of. So we'll put it this way. So it's where we pull the water out and where we're going to put the water in are not necessarily the same location. So if we put water in, say, I'll just say over here, we push the water in, it actually builds the pressure up farther down. And so it kind of like raises everything up, but it's not the same exact water that we're pulling out. We would eventually pull that water out, but it'll be 50, 60, 70 years from now.
Giving it time to percolate through the ground, go through the activated carbon, blah, 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 the whole thing to recharge it.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. And in terms of the ongoing cost with this project, so I see you got it at the 70 million total, but what's the ongoing cost if you have to replace the carbon every 4 months? Is that going to be a continual cost into perpetuity that's just going to get built into the program? How do you see that?
So yeah, so we're trying to figure out how to optimize that. We're also going to be looking at reverse osmosis as part of this. So we're really optimizing all the economics right now. It's really the reason why we're doing this pilot project. And then as we move forward to the demonstration facility, there'll be more optimization and we'll have better numbers. Right now, they're very just small, where the pilot system's about 10 gallons per minute. It's not very large.
Got it. Okay.
If I may add, it's Karen Henry, Director of Public Works. That would be an operating cost, so it wouldn't be in the capital. And yeah, if we decided that was the process in which we were going to use based off of results from our pilot, then would have to and even the operating of this managed aquifer recharge plant would have to go into our operating budget. So we haven't gotten there yet because this is further out into the future, that we're not like ready to build a full scale facility. And just to provide more context here, this is something we're continuing to evaluate. The price tag has been getting higher, and I think Chris alluded to, whether this is economically viable for us long term has yet to be determined. We're now going back through all the numbers, which we have to do. With the recent legislation that was passed, it added reverse osmosis as a requirement, which adds to the cost, which isn't even in this number. So this is something we're continuing to study, but we're also not jumping into major construction right away until we have a lot more information than we have today.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so follow up to that, because I appreciate that additional sort of context around this. With the project itself, so if we didn't do this right away, or if we didn't fund it right away, or if we moved some of the money further out into the capital program because we said, this doesn't look like construction is going to be this quickly, are there concerns about the amount of water that you're able to get out of the aquifer and whether you're going to have problems? Because I heard you saying you're monitoring the levels and you're sort of watching it go down, but do you anticipate, are we at sort of that critical point where if we don't do something, then we have a problem, or is this just trying to be, ahead of the issue?
We're trying to be ahead of the issue. I see Beth has her hand up. Let me see if I answered, Beth, and feel free to chime in if I didn't cover everything. We'd be ahead of the issue with as far as what the quantity of water in the aquifer. And we actually are working with DNR on a regional aquifer study that's not just looking typically the way these aquifer studies are going. It's Arundel County does their own, Baltimore, Calvert County does their own, Charles County does their own. We're all pulling from the same aquifer, so it makes no sense to do it that way. So we've been working with DNR on a regional study that's going to look more holistically at these aquifers and what the depletion rates are, and are they leveling off? Are they continually to deplete too much, then to be replenished? The numbers we have today for Anne Arundel County is that we are not replenishing it, which is a natural replenishment through the natural water cycle, as quickly as we are withdrawing it. We know that much. but we are not in a critical state where we're running out of water like you see in California or other places.
We have
But
concern.
yeah, we have concerns. We're trying to get ahead of it because in reality, these projects take decades. Something like this, which is new, and the state doesn't even have just this year through this legislation can now permit a pilot. They can't even permit a full-scale facility. This is a very long-term research-driven project, and in each phase of the way, each new piece of research and results that we get determines whether we are going to keep continuing on the same path or what adjustments we need to make. So it's another complex situation. Beth, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, Beth O'Connell, Chief Engineer. Just a couple of things. One is that part of that FY26 request is for funds that we'll be using. We've partnered with the University of Maryland specifically to do some additional testing and studying for exactly what you were mentioning about the 4-month carbon replacement. So looking at ways to optimize that. So that's what part of that money will be funding. But as Karen mentioned, yes, so we have a lot of data on the aquifer depletion itself. The other precursors that we could see that speak to the health of the aquifer is also saltwater intrusion into private wells. So we've been talking a lot to DNR and the health department, seeing where all those wells pop up, because as people, of course, it's not borne by the ratepayers, but when people have to replace their well because they have saltwater intrusion, they have to go into a deeper well, and that's at their cost. The other thing is we're starting to see those contaminants get pulled into the aquifer, because essentially, basically, you're reducing your aquifer bubble. So you're pulling in the salt water from the ocean, you're pulling in the contaminants from the recharge area. So part of what this does is not only does it, increase the groundwater potential just for capacity reasons, it really sort of like expands that pressurized bubble to keep out what we don't want in the aquifer.
Yeah. And then the last little part is that we are seeing some land subsidence, very slow land subsidence around some of our well areas, to the tune of 3 to 4 millimeters a year. So yeah, it's not cause concern, but it's a trend, and that we need to understand.
When you use the term land subsidence, so in non-engineer speak, does that mean the ground is sinking 3 to 4 millimeters a year because the pressurized bubble is sort of decreasing?
There's that.
Or did I oversimplify?
No, there's that, and then there's also it's a rebound from the glaciers. I know it sounds, but as the glaciers melted, they kind of put a seesaw. The glaciers had a lot of weight, and so as they melted away, the land is kind of tipping like this back. So it's a mixture of that, and plus a mixture of us pumping water out of the aquifers and then consolidating.
Okay. My last question, Madam Chair, if I can, and I appreciate DPW and my colleagues' indulgence while I try to understand this. So the last piece of this is the shared nature of it that Ms. Henry referenced. So there are other counties that are also using the same aquifer. Are there other counties that are using that, like Calvert? You mentioned Calvert. I heard that. I think you also might have said, is it Howard or?
Charles County.
Okay. So the sort of southern area. Are they also doing projects like this, or are they looking, if you know, in their capital programs to try to add something like this? I want to make sure Anne Arundel County isn't necessarily subsidizing for everybody else.
They're very interested in what we're going to do. Charles County actually has a more critical need where their wells are running dry there. So their issue is more urgent. This is probably take too long. So they're looking at other ways to address it in a quicker manner than maybe the MAR, having just said, it's kind of new for Maryland Department of the Environment to even do this. So, but they are looking to see what we do, because it's potential, whatever we do could be another source of, another solution for other jurisdictions. Something similar is being done, although it's not aquifer based, it's surface water based in Westminster, where they're reusing the cleaning the wastewater, discharging it into the reservoir, and then pulling it back out for drinking water. So it's not entirely new, but the discharging into the aquifer is what's new for Maryland, although not new in other parts of the country or even, the world.
Okay, and do you anticipate that the state at some point is going to take over or sort of do a collective solution on this that covers multiple counties? Or do you think that they're going to continue to push it down to the counties and say, you come up with the solutions?
I believe they will push it down to the counties for the counties to come up with the solutions.
Tracking.
They're not in a position, I think, to have the initiatives for innovation. I think they're looking other counties to the counties to come up with that, and then they decide whether they agree with it or not.
Yeah, they are going to be a partner with us on this coastal plain aquifer model, though. They're definitely a partner with that. And we are the largest groundwater user in the state. The county is. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just really appreciate the discussion on this capital project. Still wrapping my head around the concept, but the visit that I did a few weeks ago, maybe even months at this point, out to the pilot was incredibly helpful in understanding why we're looking at this and understanding the engineering process or the recharging process. So just want to encourage my colleagues to go out and see it as well. It's fascinating. Still trying to wrap my head around it, though.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any other hands. All right. Next.
All right. I'm going to go into water now. This is going to be the water projects. Similar approach. These are all the highlighted projects, but I'll go into each one of these individually. So first one up is the Crofton Meadows 2 water treatment plant upgrade. This is actually the end of our last upgrade. We're actually working on another upgrade to go from 15 to 20, but this is the 5 to 15 upgrade. The last piece that we have here is to put the last 2 wells in. They're redundant supply for us. So that way, if some wells are down, we'll actually have other wells that we can use and be able to maintain that 15 MGD of capacity. Interestingly enough, I was looking at the numbers that we've been producing at Crofton, and we are the highest month, I think it was July of last year, we were doing close to 14 MGD out of the Crofton Meadows plant. So the next upgrade is well needed. All right. The next one is their fire hydrant rehab project. This is a life cycle project. 7 to 10 years we go through and we repaint all the fire hydrants in our system. So this is really just an increase based off of the bids that we're seeing for the projects. So we're asking for $1.4 million going forward. W799600 elevated water storage tank project. This is actually for construction of new water storage tanks. We have one that we're under getting ready to bid out for Hammond's Lane and also Little Patuxent, which was the old Bacontown tank. We just renamed it to Little Patuxent. And then we have another Heritage Harbor tank that is going to be bid out sometime in late 26 or 27. Requesting $1.44 million based off current estimates. The Route 32 at Fort Meade project. This is a project. So our Jessup and Maryland City pressure zone, specifically the Maryland City pressure zone, are only fed by one feed, which comes through Jessup and then it goes its way to Maryland City. We've had breaks in that water line in the past, and that whole area has been out of water. This would actually put a new water main through the Fort Meade, along Fort Meade, and connect up the water system, allow us to move and push water all throughout the system. We're asking for just $600,000 in FY26, $17 million in FY27. Then in FY31, it's a $100 million project to put this 15,000 foot or 16,000 foot 30-inch water main through the Fort Meade area. So The W804300 is our new cut water treatment plant. Previously, we have spent money looking to site a location. This project, it needs to get built in the future. Part of this is to, once this gets built, we can decommission or reduce our Dorsey water treatment plant, make it to a booster pump station. So we are asking for $2.5 million in FY26 to do a further study and evaluation to figure out the timing of those improvements at Dorsey and the improvements at Crownsville, and figure out the best way that we can proceed the most cost-efficient way. W805000 water facility emergency generators. We've been putting backup generators at all of our water treatment plants and well locations. This is actually going to be the final request for new stuff so this is $1.2 million for generators. After this will more turn into a life cycle project. When generators go up, we'll be asking for money, but this will be the last one that we're actually installing from the initial push to get all of our emergency generators in. The AMI water meter project, which I think we talked about before when Karen was doing her presentation, we're asking for $19.3 million in FY27. As Karen said, that we are currently reviewing proposals right now. This will be it's a long-term project to replace all the water meters that we currently have. So there's a parallel project, which is W806300, which is our normal water meter replacement and upgrade project. That will actually decrease because we're going to be replacing the water meters here, and then it'll go up once we complete all the water meter installations there, and it'll go on a routine basis. We replace water meters every 15 to 20 years. And as we stated before, the AMI project, it gives us a whole bunch of benefits. One is leak detection, both for the customer and both for the county. It'll give us information on peak usages so we can better, more efficiently design our system. It'll give the customer much more control of how much water they're using. Again, if there's a small leak, the system is supposed to be set up to alert folks if they're using more water than they normally do. So we're really looking for the benefits for this system when it gets in play. Next up is the Arnold Water Treatment Plant Upgrade Project. This is, we're asking for $16 million in FY26 for a total cost of $17.9 million. This includes a whole rehab of the existing process control system, which really hasn't been touched in about 20 years. New SCADA system improvements, a fire alarm system upgrades, and then a new operator building up at the Arnold system, at the Arnold treatment plant. Next up is our X7337 project, which is our water main replacement and reconstruction project. We have a large backlog of projects, as I was talking about before. Our infrastructure is starting to age, so this is a rehab project. This is paid for through the EPF fund. We're asking for $20 million, as noted in the graph. This is sort of our planned backlog that we have. So we're backlogged about $22 million a year. So this should allow us to get through this and continually to replace and keep up with what needs to get done. X764300 is our water project planning project. This contains all the things that we do to plan the capital projects, as far as preliminary planning, engineering, cost estimating, things of that nature. One of the major drivers in FY26 that we're doing is our water asset management plan, rehab. So basically, it's for us to look at how we're doing asset management, maintain our assets, become more proactive rather than reactive. And I think we all kind of agree that it's better to do maintenance along the way than have to always run out and react to issues that arise. So this is a lot of the spending is there. We also got spending in there for our water utility benchmarking, which is similar to our sewer utility benchmarking, where we're going to be taking a look at all of our treatment plants, see how they're performing relative to industry norms, and as far as cost of electricity, chemical cost, staffing costs, all that, to take a look at how much it costs for us to treat water. We're also going to look at our individual plants against each other, and then hopefully we'll come up with ways that we can optimize our system and become more efficient. And then we're also doing water lab improvements under this project too. Water storage tank painting. We go out and we paint our tanks about once every 15 years. We do inspections every 5 years on system. We're asking for FY26 $3 million, FY27 $3 million, and it ramps up to $3.5 million based on the current estimate. Y514200 is our routine water line extension. Again, these are mostly for petition projects. Allows us to do extensions up to $1.5 million. We're asking for $3.5 million in FY26, $1.8 million in FY27, and then $522,000 per year ongoing. Again, if these are petition projects, they'll be required to self-support themselves, and then it'll pay the utility fund back. So with that, that is the end of my water class projects, and I'm going to take any questions you may have.
All right, Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to talk for a second about the water main replacement and reconstruction. So when you look at the projected cost of the work to be completed versus the requested level of funding, there's a pretty big disparity between those two things. So I just want to ask you, what's the answer? You know, like, I mean, that's over the life of it, it looks to me, if I'm just roughly guessing, you're probably $7 million short ballpark. So are you just anticipating we'll have more capacity to give more money in future years, or what? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah. So, you know, every year when we go through these projects, one thing is the FY 29, 30, and 31 is more probably what we're more, they're less exact with what we know, because they're sort of in the future what we think we're going to replace. Every year when we go through and we do these projects, we actually try to put more projects under design than we can currently get done, because we know that there's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be permit issues, there's right-of-way issues, things of that nature. You know, we also were ramping up, I think from $12 million, we're ramping up to $20 million. We kind of wanted to always maintain a little bit of a backlog, just so that, you know, if things don't work out, we have some other projects to do for the, you know, I don't know. I think I agree with you that it's not exact, but I don't think this science is quite exact for us to know what needs to be replaced.
It's budgeting. It's a best guess.
Yeah,
it's best guess.
And it's a matter of funding. So we can't, we couldn't fund all this. We'd have to raise the rates, the EPF, because this is mainly, this is not really growth. This is going to be an EPF. So that's the users. We'd have to really, you know, really increase their rates high. So we have to kind of level it off in a
don't want to overshoot, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so we can't be perfect because we don't have enough money to be.
So, all right. Any further questions? I'm not seeing any. Oh, Ms. Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question about the Crofton Meadows projects. What's the timeline on those? And I mean, there's the two separate 5 to 15, and then the next one.
Yeah. So
how's that puzzle come together timeline wise?
So the 5 to 15, the 15 upgrade has already been done. We have capacity at the plant for 15. We don't have redundant wells for 15. So we can produce any given day more than 15, but if some of those major wells all went out at once, then we would be stuck. So this is really just additional wells to put in.
Okay.
It's taken us longer to get these done. They're always going to be last in the whole grand scheme of things, because it's the last thing you need to do is build the redundant wells. We've run into some right-of-way issues, which we think we're nearly done now. Once we get those, we'll go ahead and bid those out. So that'll be sometime this year. The 15 to 20 is currently under design. And I think I don't have offhand what the timeline is at, but maybe I can look it up if you give me a minute.
It's easier. You're welcome to email it to me later.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's just I think that's later on this year, but it could be early next year.
Okay.
For the 15 to 20.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Not seeing any further questions. All right. Next, or was that last, Ms. Henry?
That wraps it up for DPW. I know it's been a marathon of a day, so I appreciate everybody hanging in there and all of your really great questions. And we are looking forward to your support of our budget request.
All right. Thank you very much. As we all said, it's amazing what all y'all do, and that was very thorough. We appreciate it.
So I was able to look it up. It looks like we're going to go bid this summer, and we'll be in construction next, like January 10th.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So is there any other business any council member would like to bring before the county council at this time? Seeing no movement, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? I have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The county council is adjourned until Wednesday, May 28th, 2025 at 9 a.m. when we will meet in the council chambers for the auditor's recommendations and the administration's response. Please continue to monitor our website for updates and information. And thank you all very much. Have a good day.